Well, I thought about coming up with a drinking game. But I'm sad enough as it is. You know? So, about 2 minutes before these clowns start talking, I guess, and hi, I'm Chad Riden, running for governor. Here, let's look at this for a second. This is the stuff I'm for. Not just high-speed statewide public utility internet. I mean fiber optic internet statewide as a public utility, kind of the way Chattanooga did. Good model. I think the difference between the haves and the have-nots is access to information and technology. I don't think that. I know that. It's going to be as important to us as water or electricity is, or was, whenever TVA rolled that stuff out to the state. I think it's already that important to us. I don't know about your neighborhood, but Comcast monopolizes mine, and there's no other option. So if this webcast goes to crap, blame them, because I would love to have Google Fiber or anything else, but Comcast has fought them every step of the way, and everybody else who's trying to get inroads into any place where they've got territory. So Chattanooga's got this great thing where they've got municipal internet. It's brought in a lot of businesses. It's helped locals start their own startups. It's helped with their schools, with everything, tourism. It's wonderful to walk around and have municipal Wi-Fi. It's wonderful to have everything connected on a airtight network. And if you want to compete with that as a commercial entity, go right ahead. But you have to actually compete now with somebody who's not doing it for a profit. That's what I want statewide. And to deploy that, you're going to need a lot of high-tech workers, people who are trained to lay fiber optic cable, which is a good job. It's a high-paying job. I remember when Vanderbilt was doing its rollout of fiber optic throughout campus, and I knew the people who were doing it, and it's a good gig. And we could train people to do that, and that translates directly into real-world jobs. And you have to maintain this network. You want to put up a firewall around our state, protect our utilities. A lot of common sense stuff, you would think, but nobody's doing it, so we might as well. I might as well. All right, let's see. I don't know if you can hear them.
We'll address the rules and introduce the in just a moment. But first, quick word from our host, Leadership Tennessee.
Leadership Tennessee. Hey, boys. Can you hear them at all?
Defined by its problem solvers.
Okay.
Those with a volunteer spirit coming together to find solutions. In its 5th year, Leadership Tennessee taps into that spirit and distills it, bringing impartiality, collaboration, and passion to strengthening Tennessee's communities.
I don't know.
Each year, a network of leaders from East, Middle, and West Tennessee, rural and urban, gathers to share their collective experience and knowledge to address the state's most pressing issues. Leadership Tennessee's vision
I don't want them louder than me, I know that.
Nationally as a state where leaders and engaged citizens are connected, well-informed, and committed to solving problems through nonpartisan, strategic dialogue and a balanced, pragmatic approach. Leadership
I'm just going to mute this tab.
Leaders working together for a stronger Tennessee.
In addition to Leadership Tennessee, we would like to thank our other forum partners, the College of Leadership and Public Service at Lipscomb University, the USA Today Network Tennessee, WKRN and Nexstar Media Group,
Much better.
the Vanderbilt University Poll, the Howard H. Baker Jr. Center for Public Policy at the University of Tennessee, and the University of Memphis. Also, our producer, Stones River Group, and our technical producer, Logicom.
I'd like to thank my technical team.
Leadership Tennessee members will serve as panelists for tonight's forum. They are from Memphis. Daryl Cobbins, President and CEO. of Universal Commercial Real Estate and a member of Leadership Tennessee Class 2. From Nashville, Michael Anastasi, Vice President of News for USA Today Network, Tennessee, and a member of Leadership Tennessee Class 4. And from Kingsport, Laura Wood, Senior Counsel for Eastman and a member of the Leadership Tennessee Class 5. Now, all the candidates have agreed to abide by a specific set of rules.
All the candidates haven't agreed to anything.
There will be no opening or closing statements. Candidates will not answer every question, but will be given an opportunity to answer an equal number of questions.
Definitely not true.
Candidates will be allowed 45 seconds to respond to questions.
All right, here's my rules. I'm going to say whatever the hell I want, whenever the hell I want, because I've invited myself to this party.
By another, the reference candidate will be granted.
I ran for mayor of Nashville a couple years ago, and
the audience should refrain from applauding,
cheering, or
in any other way participating
in
today's forum.
Turns out there's a lot of blockades to democracy.
To tonight's forum.
Most of them involve money.
State House Representative Minority Leader Craig Fisher.
If I was running as a big money candidate, spending millions of dollars on this campaign like all of they are,
former State of Tennessee Economic and Community Development Commissioner Randy Boyd.
But I don't have millions of dollars. And I'm not willing to sell my soul.
Former Mayor of Nashville Carl Dean.
I like Carl Dean.
Businessman
he was
Bill
a good mayor.
Lee. And Speaker of the State House of Representatives, Beth Harwell. Thank you, candidates, all for taking part tonight. Let's open the forum. I'm going to ask each of you, what would be your top 3 priorities as governor? After everyone has answered, I'm going to share
top 3 priorities as governor. I'll tell you right off the bat.
According to the
education, number 1. Everybody says they're for education spending, and none of them do it.
Thank you.
Public schools. Let's make the UT system of schools the best in the country.
There are many issues, and we all can't agree on all of them, whether we're Republican, Democrats, Independents. But I think if we concentrate on those 3 issues that it seems to me to be the most important in our state, and do better with those issues, we can lift everyone up. And those issues are, most importantly right now, health care for Tennesseans.
Yes.
Secondly,
yeah,
most
I agree.
importantly,
so,
overall,
Medicare for all
for Tennesseans, and third, jobs and economic opportunity for Tennesseans. Those would be my 3.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzhugh.
Everybody wants jobs, but how?
I'm so honored to be back on Lipscomb's campus. This is where I graduated from, so I'm honored to be here again
high-speed trains.
I will tell you, most important to me is education.
Using those wider tracks
as a
that they
member
use
of the
over in
State House,
Asia.
you get to serve on 2
for service from Bristol to Memphis.
And one of those
stops
committees
in Knoxville, Chattanooga.
So I've served on everything from finance
Nashville.
to transportation
One
to commerce.
basically across the way 40 does, just parallel 40.
But there is one committee I never rotated off of, and that's education.
24 and
because
75.
I knew in my heart and in my mind, if we were going to move our state forward, it's going to be because we improved our
regional
education
transit
system. So paramount to me is education.
As well, but
and I will say, secondly, I am very proud of the fact that we balance our budget.
Construction jobs.
So we will keep our
that's
fiscal house
maintenance
in order
jobs.
under my
that's
leadership as
engineering
governor.
jobs.
Thank you.
Mr. Dean.
Well, number 1, let me thank Lipscomb and thank Leadership Tennessee. Lipscomb's a great institution.
Okay, this is the ass-kissing part
campus
of the show where
education
they thank everybody who
I think education is the thing that will move our state forward.
I don't have any respect for Lipscomb or Leadership Tennessee because I wasn't invited. I know that Leadership Tennessee is a good organization. I don't want to bad mouth them, but they didn't. They're not so good that they're inviting independent candidates.
That'll give our kids and our
grandkids
a chance to live their dreams and to be all that they can be. So education is tops with me. I think healthcare, actually responding to the failure to do the Medicaid
now, what does that mean?
Is critical. We need to make health insurance available to more people.
Not available.
Jobs. There are parts
universal.
of the state that are hurting, and we can have no.
It's available right now.
Thank you, Mr. Dean.
We don't have any money. I don't have any money.
Thank you so much.
I want universal health care.
I'm a cattle farmer. I'm a businessman who employs 1,200 folks. An outsider who's never run for office or worked for government.
Bill Lee was a businessman,
you guys. Because of a great tragedy in my life that God used in a real powerful way in my life.
Oh, let's keep up with how many times they mentioned God.
The highest call
so
for me
Bill Lee's already brought God into the mix.
And Maria and I, to start this campaign, went to 95 counties in 95 days.
95 counties,
Everywhere
95
we
days,
went,
you guys.
people from all
I've been to all 95 counties. I've been driving back and forth across Tennessee since 1987, non-stop. Been doing comedy shows in all these little towns since 2001. Non-stop, I've been traveling back and forth across these 95 counties, but he's been doing it for the last 95 days.
Also, a great shout out to Leadership Tennessee for the great program that they put together.
Randy Boyd
and I were in the first class. 5 of our 6 gubernatorial candidates were in Leadership Tennessee. So I want to say thank you to Leadership Tennessee. Thank you, Kathy Kate, for the great leadership job that you've done in developing all these leaders.
I would suggest watching Randy Boyd's campaign videos.
These were 3 things
it's interesting.
I helped develop while I was commissioner,
his wife
while I was special
is
advisor
walking
on education.
4 or 5 steps behind him in every
I
shot.
wanted to run for governor. We want to make Tennessee
a subtle little
thing. Opportunity for better education, opportunity for better jobs, and opportunity for everyone. Opportunity for better education means completing the drive to 55.
Opportunity for a better education. We all have that opportunity.
$1 billion more a year in extra income. We also want to make sure this is the best state in the Southeast for high-quality jobs. We want to make sure we're not leaving our rural communities behind.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. You heard the candidates' answers. According to the Vanderbilt poll, 25% of Tennesseans think education should be the top priority for state government. 21% think jobs and the economy should be the top priority. 20% think health care should be the top priority. Among those Tennesseans who self-identified as Republicans, 27% think that jobs, the economy should be the top priority of state government, followed by education at 20% and health care at 18%.
Okay, those are the same 3 subjects. So we all agree those are the top 3.
33% believe that education should be the top priority of the state government, followed by health care at 22% and jobs and the economy.
Okay, so you just repeated yourself a 3rd time.
Our next question will come from Michael.
Education, jobs, health care.
And will also be for all of the candidates tonight. Michael?
Tennessee has made significant gains in K-12 education over the past 8 years, becoming the fastest improving state in the nation. What policy changes do you think are most responsible for the improvement, and what would you do to accelerate the gains during your time in office?
Thank you, Ms. Harwell.
K through 12, what changes made it better?
And our teachers and our students are living up to those high standards. That has been the most critical thing that we have done.
Are we doing great?
When I first got involved in the
How are we
process,
ranked in the nation?
48th state in the
I have first-hand experience. I have a 14-year-old who's
now we're in the 30 percentile.
just been through this
and when I'm your
state
governor, my
testing
goal
fiasco.
will be to be the
Nonsense.
top 10.
These state
We
legislatures,
set some very high standards.
legislators
we're
totally dropped the ball on that. So for the last 5 years, it's been chaos.
Relent from that.
And they need to scrap that whole thing and
we don't have our
start over.
accountability system completely in place the way it should be.
Dumb.
And as a legislator, we
statewide
take steps
testing
to
has
step back
been
from that a little
pointless
bit. But I will tell you that
expensive,
without a
and
doubt,
it's done
I would
nothing.
be
We have
committed
zero
to that.
metrics
And we have made
about the last 5
tremendous
years. It
improvements
has
in
not worked.
math and science.
Scrap
My goal
it.
would be to be known as
I
a
would
governor
like to
that
set up
believed in reading. And that will be my
reading.
next goal.
Thank you, Ms. Harwell. Mr. Dean.
Right.
I think the really positive things that have been done under both Governor Bredesen and Governor Haslam have been to set standards and to strive for excellence, and then to make education a budgetary priority. Where we go from here,
we have
is I think
schools
we need to
that aren't
continue
able
make
to
education the
open
top
on cold
budgetary
days
priority,
because the
and in fact, actually
HVAC
increase
cannot
funding.
support life.
I think we need to look at disparities.
So they open up
in
schools
funding
late.
around the state.
How about we
areas, there are,
give them enough
there are
money so we
urban
can
areas that are struggling,
have schools
and
open
we
on
need
a
to open
chilly
that up
day?
and find fairer ways to distribute money to make sure everybody gets a good education. We need to pay teachers a fair wage so that they'll stay as teachers. Teachers are everything in the classroom. We want to keep the best. We need to do more with pre-K, expand that statewide, and build on after-school programming.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, I agree with him on all those points. I think
I serve as the chairman of the YMCA.
we need to allocate more money
a program called YCAP
education.
that
We need to
serves
eliminate
at-risk inner
papers.
city youth, and I met a young man in that
he's
program
gonna tell a
and
story
got
about
involved
meeting
in
with
his
young
life,
men.
and he was failing every class in his poor performing school. I moved him to a charter school where he had a completely different trajectory to his
of course you did. At a for-profit school,
For 5 years, I've been
I'm sure you had
that young man
a great
once
time.
a week, every week.
I want public
Education
schools
profoundly
to be
impacts the
supported.
life
I
of a
want
child,
public schools to
and
be
a
better than
mediocre
any
education
private
in a
school
negative way.
anywhere.
That developed
We can do
passion
it, but it's a matter of prioritizing public schools and giving everybody the same education.
Teachers in a profound
Not the
way.
same education,
And the
that's
one thing
dumb.
that
The
I'm
same
most concerned about is our lack of vocational
quality
and
of
technical
education.
which I've lived my
We
entire
can do
life.
that.
and would be
eliminate
interested
paper.
to talk about.
I want to give students little cheap tablets when they're old enough to not break.
Having high expectations
like
and high
grade,
accountability is something we
and deliver all their textbooks.
And something we need to continue.
As soon as they start having textbooks,
major strides,
give them a tablet and give it all to them electronically. If they lose the tablet, if they break it, you got to volunteer to work in the cafeteria or around school grounds. You got to do something to pay it off and get another one. But you get another one and you get all of your homework and everything delivered to you electronically. Saves money. Then we don't have 20-year-old textbooks floating around schools that are underfunded. You deliver new content to them daily if you want to. And then they submit their homework electronically. It's all handled by
that's something that I want to be able to expand.
Online course management software. There's open source stuff available. I know that Blackboard is a popular
how far we've come. I've been a part of that.
One that Vanderbilt used
I think we
or implemented back when I was there.
One on early evaluation of teachers and
there's
early in this
there's many options available. I want that statewide.
Tenure and then
that's
testing.
on the
and we haven't
framework
gotten
of
some
having
figured out, but not
the
quite
fiber
all.
optic
But
internet
I think
statewide
our
already,
advances have come
and the Wi-Fi.
Early childhood education.
You
and
run that
something that we all know now
to the municipalities.
Reading,
you take it straight to the schools first.
Well.
You connect the schools,
also say that
and then it branches out from there. So if you're hitting all the schools, you're hitting
training is something
the area.
Toward, and it
and from the schools, you have Wi-Fi centers, and then you can take the trunks out from the school to the different neighborhoods or wherever.
Support for our teachers. Excuse me, our
we'll leave that to the networking engineers, but
all happens.
Connect the schools first.
Our next question
connect the kids.
Mr. Dean, Mr. Boyd, and Ms.
Then
Harwell.
they've got the access to information technology they needed to get a good
Staying
education.
on K through 12 education, let's discuss testing. Over the past several
testing's been a
years,
nightmare.
Tennessee has had issues as the state moves to implement
More than
online
issues.
testing. But we've also led the nation in using our testing data to ensure accountability.
Have we?
How do you
I don't
feel
think
about
we have. I just read an article the other day saying
and our
we
current
don't have the
accountability
metrics that
system?
other states have.
And is there anything you would change if you were
Yeah.
the governor?
Thank you, Daryl. Mr. Dean.
Well, I'm a big believer
we
that
wouldn't
you have
be
to have
having
accountability, and I think that same
people,
opinion
teachers
is
teaching
shared
for
by
the test.
teachers and
We wouldn't shut
educators
down
all over
schools
the
for the
state.
last couple
People
weeks
want to have
just
measurements.
to
People want to know
do
how
testing.
they're doing. I think we're in a situation now where we have
The curriculum you
more
have,
credibility to
there's
the testing
tests
program
throughout.
because of the
There's
problems
quizzes,
that
there's
we've had
exams.
in the last several years
that,
with testing.
you know,
have parents who aren't sure that
gauge
the results necessarily
comprehension,
reflect their
retention, all that
students'
stuff.
achievement or lack
Why are
of
they not good
achievement.
enough? Why do you have to
And
do
you
it end
also
of the
have
year?
results that come too late to actually have a positive effect in terms of improving teaching or addressing
I'm
particular.
not convinced we need an end of the year test.
So concentrating on getting that done and doing it right, doing the computer-based testing, but getting it done
and
in a
the
timely
methods
way
of
and
testing.
credible
Some people
way
don't
would be
test
the high
well.
priority.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Boyd.
Well, first
and you
off,
don't need to memorize
recognize
dates and
that
stuff.
Our online testing delivery system failed us this year.
You just don't.
And
You
everybody
need
recognizes that. But
to
the thing that
demonstrate,
I want to make sure that we don't give up on
skill
is
sets
accountability and setting high
at certain
expectations.
stages.
No,
So like
in
reading
sports,
levels,
if your scoreboard
for
breaks,
example.
nobody says, well, let's just stop
You
keeping
need to
score.
demonstrate
It's the
proficiency
scoreboard. And that's the
with
situation
different
that we have here. We got to continue to keep
tools,
score. It's
whether
up
it be
to us to make sure that policies don't
technological
get in the
or
way of our children
critical thinking.
continuing to have high expectations. This online testing
Demonstrability,
ability that we had, I
reading,
think the people that
writing,
we need to go to
arithmetic.
get the most insights from our teachers.
There's
our principals,
metrics
and our
already built
superintendents.
into
So
the
first off, we
education
would,
system.
organize a listening,
And yeah,
learning tour.
you have a checklist for
and
the
create some
year
action
at the end of
plans to
school,
fix it.
but
As a
I'm
company,
not convinced
we've
we
had a lot
need.
of IT issues in the past, but
I mean, if it's a funding thing where we got to demonstrate,
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Ms.
you know,
Harwell.
proficiency
Well,
to
thank you
get
so
funding,
much. And
it's
I
like,
was
okay,
a teacher for many, many years, and I meet many of my students from time to time, and they'll come up to me and they'll say, I remember when you gave the lecture about this, or I remember that class project about this, but I've never had a student come up to me and say, I remember the test you gave me. But you know what?
True.
Testing
I
is a
remember some tests
necessary
I've
evil
taken.
that exists within our education system.
Terrible.
We have to have our education system accountable because it consumes a huge part of our state's budget. And when I told
We have to have our
teachers,
education
here's what they
system
want.
accountable.
They
I
want
would
it to
like
be
to have
credible,
our
they want it to be fair, and they want
our
it to be
politicians
useful.
accountable.
And we haven't lived up
I would like to have our state
We're
legislature
trying.
accountable
And this past
for
legislative session, one of the last days of the session,
what they're
we
proposing,
decided that we are not going to use the test scores
and how far it gets where it goes.
accountable this year.
Are they proposing stuff that's
students and
unconstitutional
teachers
on a
and
basic
schools
level?
will not be
Are
held
they
accountable because we
proposing
didn't get the testing
thumbs
right.
up to Jesus laws
think
that go
we can do it.
nowhere?
Thank you, Ms. Harwell.
Are they proposing cut and
Laura
paste
Woods, and we'll
Koch
be from
brothers
Mr. Lee,
legislation
Mr. Boyd,
like they
and Mr. Fitzhugh. Laura?
obviously are? Like, the people that are doing that on the state level need to be held accountable for the taxpayer money they're wasting doing that in our time as a legislative body.
According to the Vanderbilt poll, 21% of Tennesseans support charter schools, 29% have mixed feelings, and 15% oppose. As for vouchers, 21%
charter schools. See, this is all.
23% have mixed feelings.
They'll say we want choice in schools, which means we want our rich children going to be around other rich children.
Why?
And not being around poor people. And we need the choice to be able to be away from poor people at our special charter schools.
A young man that I've worked with in the inner city, moved him from a traditional public school to a public charter school.
This is the second time you've mentioned this, Bill.
His educational outcome was transformed.
I met a black kid once, and I put him in a charter school, and he told me how great it was. Yeah, we know. But what if the school in his neighborhood was great, and he didn't have to
but that the
go
quality
to
of education that our children receive
what if that was
is the highest
unnecessary
that we can possibly give them. And
I'm not a big fan of privatizing things that should be a public function, that are a public function. We shouldn't be farming stuff out to for-profit companies. Like, there's a reason we do them collectively as a utility. We have electricity, we have water. It's not for-profit. It's utilities providing these things because they're essential, and nobody should be profiting. Capitalism is the answer to everything.
Mr. Boyd.
I'm sorry. I know you're a businessman. I know you got to pull a dollar off of everything, but that's not necessarily the way you have to do education.
My big brother or little brother and brother's big sister.
Did you send your kids to IT Tech? No, of course you didn't.
Because quality schools can be in any of those types
fraud. Did you send your kids to Trump University?
But as a business person, I believe
you go to a real school.
Choice.
Let's make our public schools number one.
That competition is a good
charter
thing.
Schools.
However, I also believe in local government's control. I don't believe that Nashville should be dictating policies to our local community. So as governor, I want to put all the tools in the toolbox. We will provide programming and support for charters and vouchers and the different programs that local communities can want to choose. But in the end, it'll be up to the local community to choose which tool out of the toolbox that they want to use.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Fitzhugh.
We'll give them a decision to use vouchers, charter schools.
My whole life went through public schools,
great.
as is all my
great.
family, including
my
grandchildren. That
like the answer to everything.
School. So I think vouchers and charters are not good for public schools. I have been against vouchers for the last 5 years, and am pleased to have led the charge to keep vouchers out of public schools in Tennessee, because with a finite pot of money, we don't have the luxury to take some of that money and give it to private interests, because I
agree. Craig, it's you. We agree on this issue.
And the public school down. Charters are a bit different, and I think as long as we give our public schools the ability to do the same things that charters do, then that may be okay. However, the performance of charters, the way I've looked at it, has not been sufficient enough for us to continue to make that a priority.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzhugh. Our next question will come from Michael Anastasi. Will be for all of our candidates tonight. Michael.
According to the Vanderbilt poll, 54% of Tennesseans think that state government does more to help people living in and around large cities, while only 34% think it is equally split among large cities and rural areas and small towns.
This is an opinion poll.
Do you think this is true? And should the state be doing more to help rural areas? And if so, what would you do as governor?
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Boyd.
To help rural areas, like I've already said, connect them via internet, connect them via the high-speed transit system. There need to be regional transit systems. Nashville just shot one down. I don't think it was good enough. I don't think it was comprehensive enough.
Counties in the bottom 10% in the entire United States.
It just didn't cover every area. It would have helped me out. I live in East Nashville currently. But my buddy who lives down by Blue Hole Road over in Nippers Corner wasn't going to have any kind of service from there to
28%
Brentwood
to communities to 45%. So we're putting in a focus on bringing more jobs there.
Is outside of the county. Maybe it's outside of the
task force.
Scope of that proposal.
120 people.
I think that was the issue for a lot of people. Is that they were not going to be their specific route was not going to be
affected. Work left to do as governor.
There's another plan. 2025. It was developed a couple years ago, and I wish I had a link to it. I'll put it on the screen right now. I'll put it in the comments.
There, except for the last 24 years.
That's a really good transit system.
I'm here in Nashville, so I get a pretty good feeling about rural and urban. And we do need some assistance in the rural areas. Our motto of our campaign is: we all do better when we all do better. If we can do better in the the rural areas in the
Knoxville
east,
needs
west,
a better
and middle parts
transit
of our
system.
state,
So does
the whole
Chattanooga.
state will do better. And
Memphis,
sometimes that means giving
sure
some breaks because of the lower tax base that rural
Bristol's
areas
kind of
have.
okay.
We have the ability. We just
Bristol's
need to do what people want in rural areas to make them a place where they want to come back and live. I say we need to ask our students why
People
are they
want to
leaving
live
and
here.
what will it take to bring them back. And I think we need to put an emphasis on that because Tennessee is a great state, and we're going to have a lot of people that want to come here, and we need to make all areas of it.
They say 100 people move to Nashville a day, so I don't think that's
Well, thank you so much. And I will tell you that Middle Tennessee is booming right now. And so I will tell you as governor, I would never offer an incentive package to someone to come and locate here in Middle Tennessee.
You would never offer an incentive package.
Those folks who are willing to go to our rural areas. And, you know, there is a beauty of living in a rural part of Tennessee. And there are people that would never want to live in an urban area. They don't like the traffic. They don't like the cost of living or the cost of real estate. There is a beauty in living in rural West Tennessee. All they need is an opportunity for jobs to be there. And that's why this past legislative session, we lowered the F&E tax for manufacturers so we can recruit more manufacturers here to the state of Tennessee.
Thank you, Ms. Harwell. Mr. Dean.
Well, I certainly understand the
manufacturing
of people in rural Tennessee or small town Tennessee who sometimes feel forgotten.
We're more of a service
an example
economy
would
now.
be Fall Creek Falls State Park, which is very rural Tennessee, and that was allowed to get into terrible condition. Now they have to tear down a building, creating upheavals there financially. I think we need to be doing more in rural Tennessee, and particularly in terms of directing economic development there. You know, for West Tennessee alone, 15 out of 21 counties are losing population. I've always believed that you build community by investing. You invest not only in economic development, which I'd make a priority in rural and small town Tennessees, but you also invest in schools, and that's why I want to address disparities.
If you invest in schools statewide,
you have to invest in healthcare. When you don't have a hospital, economic development is really hard.
If you build up the infrastructure like I've
I grew up and live on still today, a fifth generation in California. I grew up in rural Tennessee. I
in each of these
how
counties,
critically
local
important
to
it
where
is
the
to
jobs
future
will
of this
be.
state.
You train local
we have
people in these
45
high-tech
counties in this state that are either at
jobs.
risk
And
or
these construction
designated
jobs,
as distressed.
Rail.
That should not be. We are at risk of losing a way
fiber
of
optic.
life in rural Tennessee. If the next governor doesn't do something decisive about
Those
it,
are great
we will
jobs.
lose that way of life, and it
And that-
matters
we'll need that
to
in
every
all
Tennessean
95
what
counties.
happens in rural Tennessee. That's why last year I rolled out a roadmap for rural Tennessee that includes 4 things that I would do as governor to preserve this way of life, and not only to preserve it, to
We don't have to
allow it
work
to
as a governor to preserve
Mr. Lee. Our next
rural
question will come
ways
from
of
Darrell
life.
Cobbins and will be
They're
from
going to do
Mr.
it.
Fitzhugh, Ms.
You don't have
Harwell,
to.
and Mr. Lee. Darrell?
You don't need to.
In recent
I mean,
years, rural
and you're not
access
going
to
to. So
hospitals
don't even
has
say
been
you're going.
severely curtailed as a result of hospital closures. Regardless of the cause, the closures limit access to quality health care in our rural communities. Do you agree this is a major issue?
Yes.
And what concrete steps would you take as governor to help ensure Tennesseans living in rural areas have access to quality health care in a local hospital?
Thank you, Darrell. Mr. Fitzhugh.
Medicare for all.
My first answer
Step
about
one,
the top 3
statewide,
things, the first
forget
one
about the
is healthcare,
national
and much
thing.
of that
They
has
can't
to
get their
do with
stuff
the
together.
closure of
We
rural
can.
hospitals.
Massachusetts
the
did
biggest
it.
moral failure
We can
that
do
our
it.
legislature has had in the
Healthcare
24
for
years
everybody.
I've been there, in my opinion, is the failure to expand Medicaid.
Yes.
If we had expanded Medicaid, I am convinced
Haslam
those
just turned
hospitals
away
would
millions
have
and
more
millions of
than
dollars
per capita than
because it was
any
coming
other
from
state in the
Obama,
country would
and
not
all the
have
Republican
closed.
governors did
It is
that.
the most
They
important
just didn't
thing
wanna,
that we can do. The political reasons are out of the
participate
way now.
and
The first thing I
make
will
this
do
thing
as
successful,
governor
which was-
is, if I have
which
to,
would have
call a
been
special
successful.
session to have it done. It could
And instead,
reopen
we
those
got to be on the
hospitals.
Daily
It
Show,
will certainly keep
where
more of
he had
those
this
from
healthcare lottery,
Thank you,
and
Mr.
the Daily Show
Fitzhugh.
did a sketch about it.
Thank you so much.
Sketch?
I do.
I got to be in
have
it,
you
and
have
maybe
to
I'll play
understand
that a
there's
little
kind of
bit
a
later. but
misconception.
I would
that
rather,
if we had
I would rather
expanded
not
Medicaid,
be
that
on
our
the
rural
Daily Show.
hospitals would
I would
still be
rather
in
have,
existence. The bottom line is,
health
those
care
states
for
that
everybody in
not-
Tennessee,
that went ahead
and us not
expanded
be a national,
Medicaid,
national,
also have hospitals closed.
not be a
Kentucky,
national joke.
Arkansas
I would
are two
rather
very
give
good
up
examples.
future
The bottom line
opportunities
is
to be in
this.
Daily Show
Do we need
skits
to do something?
than,
Absolutely, we do. And I set up a
continue the way we go.
three-star
I would
task
rather-
force that
so much
looked at
rather
a way
healthcare
to
for everybody.
expand coverage.
It's-
And I think there's a new day here.
We're
in
on our way
Tennessee,
there.
and I
It's going to be.
believe,
It's eventually going to
I
happen.
don't
We
agree
might as
with
well be a
everything he
leader.
wants to do, but I will tell you this about President President Trump. I think he understands that domestic issues belong at the state level where they can be more efficiently and effectively run. And I believe we have the opportunity to go to this administration and say, let us reform not only expansion, but also our current TN Care program. And that's what I would do.
Mr. Lee.
So I'm going to just go ahead and discount everything she says. She just said she thinks
we have a system
Trump's doing
that is
something
fundamentally flawed. We have 3 Ps, payers, providers, and patients. At all 3 of those points, there is virtually no incentive to lower cost. And when you have a system that doesn't lower cost, then you have an unsustainable system.
Healthcare
and it's
systems
irresponsible
which are
for us
for profit.
to sit back and let
you
rural
have insurance
fail
companies
without
which are for
addressing
profit.
the real challenges.
You have pharmaceutical companies which are for
particularly
profit.
if our president does give us block grants to allow us to construct a
the Japanese system
that will lower cost, and then in rural communities will change the way that system looks.
Exception to how they treat mentally ill.
For patients to provide better access.
It's a cultural thing.
Until we change fundamentally the system, we will not solve the problems in rural Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
We need universal health care. We need single payer.
As part of our forum
we need to take the profit out of
to help our audience
I'm sorry for
know you as candidates and individuals.
We need to make that
These are questions designed to have an answer that's a single
you still
word,
make money doing
phrase. Our first rapid fire question is,
the goal shouldn't
so
be
far,
profits.
what has been your most memorable moment on the campaign trail? Mr. Fitzhugh.
Well, I've gotten to know Interstate 40 a lot better than I thought I had. It's a wonderful highway. I just go and turn left and right. But I must say, my most memorable moment is to get to know these folks.
Good for you.
I don't agree. I've already disagreed with all but one of them right now, but I'll disagree with the other one in a little bit. But they're good folks.
Thank you, Mr.
They're good folks, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Boyd.
That's hard to answer, but I'll just pick the first one that came to mind. So I ran across the state, 537.3 miles, and I met a young lady named
I ran across the state. It's like Lamar Alexander, but I did it faster.
And was very inspirational.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Dean.
The most surprising thing I saw was in Pulaski, Tennessee, when I was visiting there, and they brought me upstairs in an old building on the square where they had discovered an old opera house that had been built up above it and that had been there for a century. And the thought of redoing that and restoring it to its glory would be a great thing for Pulaski and the state of Tennessee, but it was fantastic to see it, and a little bit dangerous because it was pretty bad shape.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Lee.
I think the most inspiring thing on our campaign was I referenced the fact that Maria and I took an old RV to 95 counties in 95
An old RV? I've seen photos of that RV.
We decided to start.
If I had access to it right now, I would live in it. That is not an old RV. You know, my brother's living in an old RV. He's living in like an 82 Winnebago right now.
We have some real challenges.
That's an old RV.
Across the state that
you were in a luxury,
forget our very
beautiful
first campaign stop
RV.
As the first
and if it's still available, I will take it.
Van Buren County.
Thank you, Mr.
I will make that my permanent residence.
Thank you so much. You know, it's been my honor to not only serve as the state Republican Party chairman, in which I traveled all 95 counties, but also a speaker for the last 8 years, in which I've been to all 95 counties. So this is not new to me, but I will tell you something that really motivated me. I was in Jackson, Tennessee, where I went to see where they were building a new facility for law enforcement training. And you know what? They use the workers from the local jail to provide the equipment and the personnel to build that. And I was so impressed when I left there. And here's the good thing. Those people were all in demand to be hired as soon as they left the prison system. That's a difference we can make when we try to think outside the box.
Thank you, Ms. Harwell. Our next question will be for all of our candidates tonight and comes from Laura Woods. Laura?
Thank you for noticing.
Tennessee is a very unhealthy state. We rank in the bottom 10 states in the nation for many health metrics, including obesity, diabetes, depression, and mortality. It has a negative economic impact in the billions of dollars each year. How big of a priority would this be for you as governor? And please tell us the tangible plans you would use to pursue to address our major health issues.
Thank you, Laura. Ms.
I've already said
without a doubt, we need to offer people incentives to live healthier lifestyles. And we are doing that now with our state employees. We're saying to our state employees, if you will go online and you will participate in a wellness program, if you will stop smoking, if you will do certain things, you can get a lower premium. And that's the type of incentive we need to offer to people. You know, we have a misconception in our country that, you know, you're either going to be a marathon runner or you're a couch potato. The honest truth is most people are like me. They're never going to be a marathon runner, but you know what? They could walk every day. And they could choose carrot strips instead of French fries every now and then. So there are always ways we can incentivize people to live a healthier lifestyle.
Thank you, Ms. Harwell. Mr. Dean.
Well, when I was mayor, I was very concerned about this, and we had a series of initiatives that we worked on, you know, Walk 100 Miles with the mayor, we did 5Ks and field days and things like that. We used the bully pulpit to get people to understand the importance of preventative health care. I mean, the fact is that Tennessee is, if you look at these health matrices, including women's health in general, we rank in the bottom 10 in almost all of them. We are not a very healthy state. I think we need to encourage people to be more fit. We need to make sure that people have access to health care where they can get checkups and find out what their health condition is and take preventative action. And I think we need to think about building things such as greenways and parks so that a healthy choice is an easy choice and people have access to the outdoors and to exercise everywhere no matter what their income.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Lee.
Or is it?
I do think we have an impending crisis, a tsunami, really, of preventable health. In 1990, not one state in America had a 20% obesity rate. Today, not one state has less than that. We have to address this largely, 80% of healthcare is preventable and chronic, largely preventable and chronic. Now, I don't believe that government is the answer to problems. I am a guy who believes that the private sector and the nonprofit community are much more effective in solving the challenges of our state, particularly challenges like Healthy Tennessee. And I chaired the YMCA, who had enormous opportunity and incentives and initiatives around health. And that's the way that we will change health going forward in Tennessee.
YMCA's?
Well, the reason why I ran across the state of Tennessee was to promote.
That's not how we're going to change things going forward.
It's not just about running. We had Metro Drug Coalition run with me and to promote the fact that we needed to teach more drug education at elementary school. So
drug education.
Influences, but the premise is correct. We're
First of all, let's legalize weed.
Obesity.
Let's start
number
there.
8 in the country, and smoking.
Opioids are a problem.
In teenage obesity,
because
that's not
they were
sustainable for a
overprescribed,
state that's also 42nd in the
pharmaceutical
country in
companies
income.
could make some
There are
money
two
by
places
selling
we
to
can
you.
contact people.
So
One
who
is
cares?
at the workplace. My company put together
Now
a
it's turned
wellness
into
program 8 years
heroin
ago.
epidemic,
Last year,
whether they want to admit that or not.
claims went down 19%. It can be done with the
awful.
right focus.
It's a terrible
Second,
situation.
we can reach our students at their schools. At our community school, we have a community garden, teaching them to grow food and about healthy food means. There are ways we can.
The war on drugs has
and
failed,
will
for
be
sure.
a top priority of mine.
So let's start there.
Mr. Fitzhugh.
Let's
I've always been an
legalize
active guy, but we had a health
marijuana
forum
for
earlier,
sure.
and I had to
I would
admit that,
go as far as to say
my
everything,
physical
but,
activity has just really gone since I've been on this race, and my
we're not ready
diet
to
hasn't been very good
steps.
either. So I made the commitment
We
there.
just
I
got
actually
alcohol
think I
sales
said
on Sunday.
that I'd like to be a model when I get elected and you know,
legalize
see
weed.
how I can do.
All the states have done
because
it
I
are
think
doing
you know,
really well
children would get a big kick out of it anyway. But the point is, we need to live better. We need to eat better. We need to exercise more. And as all of us have said, those are the things that will make an importance. And we have to have it. We have to have it a priority.
Whether it's emotional or
this year we passed a bill, a physical education bill in school, and we passed another one earlier than that to make sure kids get out and exercise
we're very
in many
reactionary
different
as far
ways.
as
So
healthcare
we need to make it a priority in the state.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzhugh. Our next question will come from Michael Anastasi and will be from Mr. Dean, Mr. Lee, and Ms. Harwell. Michael?
According to the Vanderbilt poll, 76% of Tennesseans believe that opioid addiction is a state of emergency or a major problem, and almost half believe that drug companies and doctors who prescribe opioids share as much of the blame as the people who abuse opioids. Do you think the opioid issue is a state of emergency, major problem? Who is to blame? And what is your plan to address this issue?
Thank you, Michael.
Well, that's what I was saying.
Well, I think it definitely is a crisis here in Tennessee. The number of people who have died, the number of families that have been devastated by opioid epidemic is,
we need to provide
distressing.
Rehabilitation.
But, I think we're making progress. I think the legislature passed some good legislation this year trying to get a handle on overprescription of drugs. And we need to monitor that carefully, and if we need to improve it, then we should improve it. I
personally know people
I think one of the big gaps
currently
we have
addicted
here in Tennessee
and
is
have been in the past.
That is, again,
And what they
partially related
need
to
is
Medicaid expansion. We
more than
have
need.
nowhere near the
What everybody
treatment that we
needs as
need
well.
here.
Secondly,
there's a
they need
place called
support,
Renewal
which
House
is
here in
the same
Nashville
thing.
that works with
But,
young
throwing them in
mothers
jail
and,
does nothing.
and pregnant women, and they
rehab
have a 50-person waiting list. I
doesn't
also
always
saw
work
a
for
place
everybody.
in Jackson, Aspel,
There's
which
gotta
also
be
has a waiting list.
individualized
We need to have
care
more
for
treatment
each of
available in
these
our
people.
state.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Ms. Sarwell.
Well, thank you so
And
much. We did
less-
take some action
less
this legislative
judgment.
session. I set up a task force, and the governor agreed with some of
People
the
get-
recommendations we made. Number one, we limit the
People get
number of
kicked out of
prescriptions for
social
those that
groups
are opioid naive.
because of
That
their
means people
drug
that have
abuse
never received an
issues.
opioid drug before. We've limited those to 5-day prescription.
They end up being
because
isolated,
literally in the 6th day, you can see a
just makes
change
them
in the
spiral.
brain. And we've taken scans of brains,
We
and we
need to
know that's
bring
true.
people
Number
in
two, we have increased the
and
number of TBI
help
agents. We
without-
will have
without
5
that.
in
And I know
East
that last
Tennessee
part is-
and 5 in West Tennessee to try to keep
asking a
illegal
lot.
drugs from coming into our state.
We need to be
And then
compassionate
finally, I will say
and
we will
give
never
people opportunities
incarcerate our way out of that
and
out
give
of this
them
problem. That
help.
is not the answer. The answer is rehab.
Jail
And we
time.
have put more money in drug courts where people are sentenced not to time in prison, but time in rehabilitation. I think those three things will
Wouldn't
go a
sentence
long
them.
way.
You have to
Thank you, Ms.
want.
Sarwell. Our next question comes from Daryl
can't
Cobbins and
force
will be
somebody
Mr.
to-
Lee, Mr. Boyd, and Mr. Fitzhugh.
To
Daryl?
clean up. They have to want
It
to.
seems that political polarization
Give them the
continues to
opportunity
grow
to.
across our country. However, according to the Vanderbilt poll, 76% of Tennesseans prefer for
Should have
elected
started drinking
officials
before this started.
to work with members
Really-
of the other political party, even if it means compromising
Every time I
on
watch
some
the
of their
news, I get
values
mad.
and priorities.
I don't know why I thought
Do you
this would be
agree or disagree that working
the
with the
root
other
of all
party is
things I'm mad
important?
about.
Why? And where do you see opportunities to work with the other party?
Thank you, Daryl. Mr. Lee.
I think what you're talking about is leadership. The governor of this state is the head of the executive branch of government.
Thank you for explaining that, sir.
That as we consider this,
Now that I know
we
that, we
consider
can move on to the next
executive
question.
leadership going
What is
forward.
government?
I know in my own company, we oftentimes have to sit people around the table who have conflicting interests and competing interests. You do it in business with customers as well. We do it in all forms
driving
in
me
the private
crazy.
sector and in the nonprofit community. Leadership and casting a vision and having people of all types come together and execute a strategy
types.
on that vision is what
Wait a
this
minute, I
job
thought
is
this
all
guy
about.
was a
Thank you,
Republican.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Boyd.
Does
I
he
don't
like
think it's
black
about
people?
the R's or the D's. It's about the T's.
Does he have
My
black
experience
friends?
has been that if you're focused on the right things, the things that really matter, we can all come together. When I worked on the Tennessee Promise, remember that we worked for a year on that program. I couldn't tell you today who was a Republican and who was a Democrat, but in the end, 91 out of 99 representatives voted for it, 32 out of 33 state senators voted for it. In economic development, when we're working with local communities, mayors, local elected officials, it never came up what party we were in. It was about landing that job. And so important things, the parties didn't matter. And finally, working on the Rural Economic Opportunity Act to help our rural communities. I had a task force of 120 people all across the state. I couldn't tell you today which ones were Republicans or which ones are Democrats, but we got big things done by focusing on what's really important.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Fitzhugh.
Thanks. I think we have to cooperate with both sides. I've been in the legislature for 24 years.
Both sides,
of that,
country
I've been a
and
minority
western.
leader. So I know
There's
it's
more
like-
than
it's
two
like being a
sides,
minority.
and I think that's the
Sometimes
major
I've been
issue
called a
here.
fierce partisan,
For me,
but I can also count.
is,
so I can count
our
votes.
two-party
I know
system
how much
is pretty
we have,
detrimental
and we
to
have.
thought.
So it's
And
one of the reasons I think
ideas
I'll make a pretty good
flourishing.
governor
It's
because
all
I know
very-
the legislature.
well, he's got an
I'm
R.
part of it.
He's blue or
I see
red.
some justices
Like
in the
high school
audience. I'm a
football
lawyer.
teams.
I
We're
know
like
the
rah 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 for the home
judicial
team
branch, and I know what an executive
murder those other
and I
guys.
know how to
That's
compromise
dumb.
on things that are not core issues, so we can get things done. I'm confident of it in my administration.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzhugh. Our next question will be for all of our candidates tonight and comes from Laura Woods. Laura?
Get in
It's
there, Laura.
estimated that approximately 400,000 Tennesseans don't have health insurance.
Yep.
Tennessee is one of 18 states that has chosen not to expand its Medicaid program,
Yeah.
which would allow more
Well, your governor made that
low-income
choice.
uninsured adults to have health insurance. According to the Vanderbilt poll, 66% of Tennesseans think we should expand our Medicaid program known as TennCare.
Everybody.
Do you support or oppose Medicaid expansion in Tennessee?
Yes.
And if you oppose, what would be your plan to help provide coverage for low-income Tennesseans?
I've already been over this. Medicare for everybody. It's a no-brainer.
Mr. Boyd.
I'll tell you, none of these people that you see on your screen or there
that opportunity still
are
not available
using
to us.
TennCare. I'm on TennCare. I've been on TennCare for a couple of years. I'm a comedian. I know I haven't proved it here tonight, but I do comedy.
Is go back to Washington, D.C.
sometimes.
And for a block grant.
There's no boss.
We can do that.
There's no 401k. There's no health care plan. You're in a different bar every night.
We have now, hopefully,
and
as much as we would have
if you do your job well, you get to come back in a year.
Tennesseans get to set the rules for
none of those people are going to provide health care for me.
Set our own rules. We can do a better job.
Just doesn't work that way.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Fitzhugh.
And in Nashville, we have a lot of creatives here.
Governor Haslam has put us
in
place a reverse block grant. He has asked the federal government.
There's a lot of musicians, there's a lot of singer-songwriters, there's a lot of artists I know.
The government will give us a
none of these people have traditional 9-to-5s or corporate overlords that can hand them
everybody in the
out
country wants. They want to do
so
that.
relying on employers for healthcare is stupid.
And I've been fighting this thing for years, and there is no political, no monetary reason, there is no reason why we should not expand Medicaid. Nobody on this panel can tell me that there is.
Give it to everybody.
Mr. Fitzhugh, Ms. Harwell.
Everybody.
Well, again, I set up a task force, and the three-star task force came with what I thought was a very legitimate proposal to take to the federal government. I think we have a new administration. I think we can go to them and say, not only do we want to cover more people, especially in behavioral health issues, which is what the three-star did, but we want to make sure that we have triggers in place that we never expand our program to the point that it's consuming more than 38% of our budget, which it is right now. And you may recall that
why do we care what percentage
we had
of the
expanded
budget
Medicaid up until 2005 in this state, and that's when Governor Phil Bredesen became the governor, and he said we're going to have to cut it back because it is consuming too much of our budget. So we have to be very, very careful. I know it sounds good to cover everyone. The bottom line is it consumes a huge part of our budget.
It costs money. Yeah, we know, ma'am.
I'm definitely in favor of Medicaid expansion, and I think
if
what
we cut
can
profit
do
out of
at this
healthcare,
point, looking back to that decision, we can see that what the
Medicare
results
for all,
were.
single
Our
payer,
state has lost
cut the pharmaceutical industry out, cut the insurance industry down to its knees, and
that's money that could have been spent to give people with low income, people with pre-existing conditions, people with disabilities access to health care, and we said no.
Everybody needs
and
access.
as a result of that, there are people in our state, hundreds of thousands of people who don't have hospitals.
Everybody.
With 10.
Everybody should get a massage.
It's wreaking economic havoc on small towns
and
rural areas.
Thank you, Mr. Dean.
It will help you.
I think one of the main and most important jobs of the governor
money's important.
is to make certain that a state is fiscally solvent and that we are in a good financial condition. Healthcare costs are escalating so rapidly. My company's health insurance premiums went up 29% 2 years ago, 19% last year. That is unsustainable.
I've been chasing the mighty dollar.
And if we expand Medicaid under a system that we do not fundamentally change in order to lower costs before we expand it, we're going to end up in the exact same situation that we ended up before when we expanded Medicaid in this state. The state couldn't afford it. We had to roll people off of the rolls. It's irresponsible. It's not about whether or not we want to cover someone. It's about whether we're taking a responsible approach with health care. And I do not think
but you're prioritizing money over
people. Mr. Lee, our next question will be from Mr. Fitzhugh, Mr. Dean, and Mr. Boyd, and comes from Michael Anastasia. Michael?
Staying on Medicaid, some states require low-income, able-bodied adults without children to work in order to receive state-sponsored health insurance. According to the Vanderbilt poll, 83% of Tennesseans support work requirements for the Medicaid program.
Yeah,
do you support or
oppose
requirements, and why?
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Fitzhugh.
Thank you. For the Medicaid expansion population, I support work requirements because they are the workers
then how do we judge that?
Afford it.
You work 40 hours a week. All right, I'm a comedian.
It is important
I spent 40 hours this week sitting around thinking of mean things to say about these people on the screen.
We don't have many
able-bodied
people on our
Or are you going to check the time clock I punched into?
Women
because I've worked more than 40 hours.
And those that take care of the elderly. Those are the ones
define,
that
like your work requirements are from your point of view of what work is.
Estimates are,
and that's not necessarily it. Some people are out splitting firewood for a job
to find those
selling
people
it
and
back
get
of a
them a
pickup
job
truck
and
on the
put
side
them to
of
work.
the road.
Who would take care of their children?
Like,
would pregnant women be able to work through their pregnancy?
How are you going to get them to qualify for your
of the
work
elderly
requirement?
when
You're going to send somebody out to monitor?
It makes no sense.
Their pickup truck sales.
Like, I have not seen a workable plan for
exactly. There's no way to enforce this.
Benefits.
And there's no
understand
reason
people's
to.
desire to see people who are receiving benefits do some sort of work, but I have not seen any plan that makes sense. And I think the point that was just made that most
people talk about smaller government
position to work.
No, but we got to make sure they're not on drugs. We got to make sure they're at work.
The plan just sort of to create it,
like, what do you
up
care?
creating the huge bureaucracy. To monitor it, to find jobs, to keep track of people.
We agree,
we'll spend more
Carl
money
Dean,
on that
on
than
this.
we'll spend on actually giving people access to health care, and that concerns me.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Boyd.
And so I also support work requirements. However,
of course you do,
because
you're
we need
just
to be very prudent in how we roll this program out. One estimate I saw said it would cost us about $19 million
and how we suppress
a year
people economically.
Program, so we got to look at the.
We got to figure out ways to get money to my friends and me.
The spirit of it, we've just got to make sure.
And I got to get a little bit more tan.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Our next question comes from Laura Woods and will be for Ms. Harwell, Mr. Dean, and Mr. Lee. Laura.
Tennessee is heavily dependent on the collection of sales tax
I thought she said
government services,
yeah,
such as
Laura Woods,
education, public safety, and social services. Last year, Governor Haslam proposed a new rule that would require online businesses above a certain revenue threshold to collect sales tax just like local mom and pop brick and mortar businesses do. Do you support or oppose requiring internet retailers to collect taxes already due from online purchases? Why or why not?
Thank you, Laura. Ms. Harwell.
Sales tax
I
for
understand where Governor Haslam's coming from. This is a state that relies on sales tax, and I think that's a wonderful thing. We don't want to ever be an income tax state. We want to be a low tax state. We are ranked the third lowest tax state in the nation. We are the lowest debt state in the nation, and that hasn't happened by accident. We've made some conscientious decisions to make sure that that is the place. So, I will tell you, it's not fair for mom and pop stores to have to pay a sales tax when online do not.
Thank you, Ms. Harwell. Mr. Dean.
Yeah,
fairness.
I agree with that. I mean, I think we have to study this issue closely, but the fact is that more and more items are going to be sold that are not going to be covered by the Tennessee sales tax. They're going to be items that are coming into the state through the internet, and that will result in lost revenue to the state. So we have to find ways where we can capture some of that revenue.
Sales tax shouldn't be our main source
fund the basic
of revenue for the state.
Functions of the government, and I think we need to look at that carefully. But it's something I would agree with Governor Haslam. We definitely should be reviewing.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Lee.
I actually think.
Yeah, I believe that lowering taxes on businesses creates jobs.
I'm not an idiot.
And we have to be fair across the board.
I know that the chances of that happening
structure in the
state astronomically slim.
I believe, for example, that our F&E taxes.
What I'm about to say would end the career of any politician.
We are a low tax state, but
we're
not a low tax business state.
Because I'm not a politician.
If you're in business, you know that.
I think we should tax the top 1%
our F&E taxes
of earners
to be competitive
in Tennessee.
With adjacent states.
Nobody else gets a sales tax. I mean, nobody else gets an income tax
and for
except
creating a fair,
for the 1%
tax
of earners
structure for all businesses.
And all I want to take is 1% of their earnings.
Online businesses.
1% from the 1%.
The rest of us who are in businesses.
Somebody on my Facebook feed did the math for me on that and put the numbers up, and they're like, "Well, that only means
mentors,
150 million a year."
As an important mentor
Great
to you, Mr. Boyd.
That's 150 million more than we had last year.
Boy Scout Master.
And it's not going to put a dent in any of those people's earnings.
Teachers.
It's not going to discourage them from earning more money.
Miss O'Neill for high school English.
I know that saying you want an income tax
one of my
is a career killer.
Who's
but I'm not saying it about you or anybody you know.
A brilliant
I'm saying
business
just
mind,
the top 1%.
And one who's
you will never be a millionaire. I'm sorry to break it to you. Everybody thinks they can play basketball or rap or get on a great YouTube channel and be a millionaire tomorrow, but it's not happening.
I dearly love them, and
I'm so sorry. Very few of you will be millionaires. I'm willing to bet
my baseball
that
coach,
1% of you
and
had the opportunity to be a millionaire.
Next question comes from Daryl.
Most of you will never be a millionaire
tonight, Daryl.
And what I'm saying
Moving to higher
will not
education,
affect you except in a
Tennessee is making
positive
progress
way.
in getting more
We're going to tax the top
some type of
1%,
post-secondary education,
and we're going to
thanks
tax them
programs
1%.
like the Tennessee Promise.
And
When it
that'll
comes to
help.
completion rates,
I don't want to do a
we
sales
still
tax.
struggle with less than 3
screws
in 10
everybody.
students graduating at community
Everybody.
colleges. 6
The
in 10
poorest
students
people
at 4
are hurt the
institutions,
most by
and
sales
only
tax.
4 in low-income
Because they're spending
students
more of their,
completing program
a larger
study
percentage
overall.
of their income on
As governor, what specifically would you
that
do to
sales
improve
tax.
the
A large
overall
percentage of their income
post-secondary
goes
graduation rate
to
and
sales
address the
taxes.
equity gap?
Thank you, Daryl.
The
Mr. Dean.
extremely wealthy
Well, I think the main thing
Buy the
we
same
can do
amount
is
of food
look at, as the last
as anybody
question
else
was, at mentors.
to stay alive.
One of the things
You know
that
what I mean?
when we had Nashville Achieves when
Like
I was
there's-
mayor, which began the year before the Tennessee Promise, and we modeled it on the same system they had in Knoxville. Part of that was having, like the Tennessee Promise, was having mentors assigned to students. And I think when you have mentors, people helping students understand what the challenges of college will be, what the challenge of finance will be, and somebody they can turn to
We need to
as
have,
they go through
personal
community college
finance
or
courses
college
at
to
the
get
high school
help and
level.
advice, I think helps a lot. And so I
There's
think building up
economics,
mentorship programs
macro,
is absolutely
micro.
essential.
Thank you,
There
Mr.
needs to be
Dean.
a
Mr.
personal
Lee.
finance
I
class.
think that
My daughter's taking
part of
like
the challenge in post-secondary
a freshman
is that for
class
so
that
long,
basically tells you
we have ignored
this is how you
in our
school.
K through 12 and in post-secondary the
this
issue
could be
of
wrapped into
vocational,
that because that's a
technical, and agricultural
largely
education.
useless
We
class.
have created a narrative that
But you
says
could have
that
a-
everyone should go to college.
here's how you
That's the reason
get a
we
credit
have
card, here's how you
colleges
not
with
get into
so
debt,
many people that do not
here's how you manage a
succeed
checking
when
account,
they move on that
here's
direction.
how you connect your
I have a
PayPal
master
to
plumber's
your
license.
checking.
I employ hundreds of
Here's how you
skilled
have
people.
overdraft protection.
I run a company that
Here's
was
how you do
chosen by the
basic
Tennesseans as the
investments.
best company to work for in
Here's how you
Nashville, and we
squirrel
can't
away
fill the
money
jobs that
into
we
a
have. That's
Roth
because in our
IRA.
education system, both in K through 12 and post-secondary, we've ignored
Basically, I want to put Mark
vocational,
Knudsen in
technical, and
charge of
agricultural education for way too
financial
long.
education
And if we really
for
want to change those numbers, that's what we can focus on.
Thank you,
9
Mr.
through
Lee.
12th
Mr. Boyd.
So I'm proud of the Tennessee Promise program, something that we started in Knoxville that expanded to Tennessee Achieves and then became the Tennessee Promise. So far, 260,000 kids have
I read a thing
gone
that
to
said
college,
Tennessee Promise
matched with 42,000 mentors that were been trained to
did not
call
have
those mentors. We've had an 82%
gangbuster
increase
results
in the
that they
graduation rate.
expected,
We still have a long ways to go.
but
which is
it
why I
turns
started an
out the
organization
program
called
was
Complete
good,
Tennessee.
and
I'll just
the
highlight
graduation
two key things
rate-
we found that would help. We did a bridge program at Southwest
Not what they
Community College in
wanted,
Memphis.
but
39 kids did a
still
TN program in
good.
the summer. All 39 passed. All
like
39
the-
got 9 credit hours.
from what I've read,
All 39 entered college.
the program
all 39,
has been
100% went on
successful
to the spring
in
semester.
sending
we also need to bring
kids
college
to
back
school
to the high schools.
who otherwise
building
would
TCATs
not go
back
to
at the
school.
high schools so that we can eliminate the
And that's
transportation
good.
issue that is such a big challenge.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Fitzhugh.
Thanks. One of the proudest moments in my legislative career was the work that I was lucky to do with the Complete College Act. It was a sea change as to how we pay
saying
for
stuff from a
schools
resume?
when we funded higher education.
I'll tell you,
instead of how many students
the-
you had.
the happiest I ever
behind a desk
been
at a
was
certain
when,
time is how well those students did and how you
bullet
moved them toward
point on my
graduation.
resume.
I think that was a great thing, and I want to extend that to let's track those students and see how they do getting jobs and how successful they are. And then the other thing is,
But then what are you
going
gonna do with that data?
Who are still the first in their family to go to college, and they're not used to the college rigor. And we have to make sure that we don't penalize them, like a bill that we had in the legislature that fortunately didn't pass to cut off
I know I studied
if they
broadcasting.
didn't take so many hours to get out of.
I'm sure there's harder
to
course
graduate
loads.
at a certain particular
Thank you,
time.
Mr. Fitzhugh.
Is it hard?
I'm very proud of the state legislature for
just-
promoting Reconnect and Strong
just don't-
Acts
it's
and
like
some of
anything
the
else.
others
You
that
just
have
go
made
and
it
you commit, you
possible.
don't quit,
In the state
you
of
show
Tennessee,
up.
if you want a higher education, you
go to
get
that 8 a.m.
free
class,
tuition for the first 2 years.
and you-
However, I will tell
just
you,
do
one of
the
the
work.
crises that we
You-
have is
you
that
read
they
the
are
book ahead of
improperly
the
prepared
class.
for college work. I was
It's
a
not
college
hard.
professor, and it is doing a disservice to young people
I taught at the
to bring
college
them into
level.
a
I taught
college
at
setting
the-
if they're not
well, I don't
prepared.
wanna
So we
name
have to strengthen our
I taught at a
K-12
for-profit
education system. That's number
art
one.
college.
And then number two, I will say,
And I got
that
paid
college
really well
education
for it.
is
That was
great,
a
but it's not right for
$36 an hour
everyone.
job.
There are wonderful
Pretty great.
opportunities to make a great living and
I
make
wish-
a wonderful income doing things
I know
in the
called
technical
no showed
world,
them.
and that's
It's a
where we
terrible
want to
job. I don't
put
like
emphasis
teaching.
going forward.
Thank you, Ms.
Like,
Harwell. Our
honestly,
next question comes from Michael Anastasi and will be from Mr. Lee, Mr. Boyd, and Mr. Dean.
honestly, I'm
Michael?
self-taught. about
Tennessee is often viewed as a leader in higher education reform goals, and is the only state in the country where 100%
anybody who doesn't
funding
have the
to public
gumption
colleges
to
and
just
universities is based
teach
on
themselves
outcomes such as retention and
just
graduation.
infuriates.
Do you
If
think
you need
the
a
outcomes
teacher,
formula is working?
you're not my type of person.
And what other potential
if you're
higher
a
education
do-it-yourselfer and
accountability
you figure it
measures
out on your own,
would you propose?
you're my kind of person.
Thank you, Michael. Mr.
And so, like, all these kids
I think that your
in my
previous
classroom,
question
like, you'd have, say you have 10 kids
addresses
in the
a
class.
little bit about whether
2 of them are brilliant
the
and don't need you at
outcomes
all
formulas are working.
and operate
Um,
on a
we
high
don't have the
level no matter
outcomes
what you say or do.
that we want.
2 of them
Part of those
never
are
show up.
the way that we have a
Or
formula.
if they do,
set
they
up.
show up like
Part of
halfway
that
through the
is
semester, they put
what
their
I
feet up,
referenced earlier, which
and
is
they,
who goes
you know,
into our
they're defiant and
higher
weird,
institutions and
and
why
then you never see them
those
again.
that we send in
Odd.
that
It's like they're
don't-
paying for it.
that
They're
have
paying
other
for this
opportunities in other
school.
places that they would
They
be better
don't-
served,
they
that
don't
their
get
giftings and their talents would be used.
And then 8,
So
you know,
I think
whatever,
we have to
no,
look
Matt.
at
See,
the
I said 10.
entire higher
So
education
2,
system, how
6,
it is that we change
6
it
of
in
them
moment to have better
are
outcomes.
just kind of
Mr.
dumb.
Lee, Mr. Boyd.
And they need you to lead them
so
through every step.
Performance funding
And that was
formula
very
is working.
frustrating.
We're having significant
It's like I
progress in
liked
our
interacting with those
graduation
2 people that
and
were
completion
brilliant
rates.
and
However,
didn't need me at
there's a
all.
lot of work left to be done. So a
I
few
like
things
helping
that we've
them
just recently
and
initiated
enabling
is
them.
a network
And then
of college
the
advisors
6, I
across
liked
the state,
giving them
working
the
with
tools that
students
they
in
needed to
college
do
help them
what I was teaching, which was
progress
I was
through the
teaching
through
video for
college
the internet
experience. That's something
and
that
audio
we
for the
piloted.
internet.
It's something that we need to
That's
expand
cool.
and do a lot more of. But I also think it's
So it's
important
it was nice
when
to
we
be
break
able to
down some of
help
the
people
barriers between college and K through
and
12.
teach them
One of the
something.
biggest barriers
But
to graduating
like,
from a technical
most people
college
are
or community
tedious.
college is transportation. Most
I
of the
really- I would rather
communities why they're
provide
graduating is because they don't have transportation.
help and assistance
and
for
if we
the
can
people who
build a
don't need
technical
it.
school on the high school campus, they already have public transportation.
It's
They
just-
can graduate with a high
I
school
want to surround myself with
and a
geniuses.
certificate at the same time.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Dean.
You know?
Well, I think it's
And
clear
the-
that the best way to ensure success in
And I've
college
done that.
is to make sure that we offer quality K through 12 education or pre-K through 12. We want to make sure that our students are ready for college and that they're going to succeed in college. And that involves making sure that our
These guys are all so boring.
pre-K through 12 is working and doing the job correctly.
If you
We
elect
also
me
need to make
governor,
sure that
it
when
won't be
students go to
boring.
college, that there are funds
And
available for them.
I feel like
And
that
I think
sales
we need
pitch
to do
worked
more
for
in
Trump.
terms of state scholarships, particularly in the area of four-year colleges now.
So,
We need to have more money available there because a lot of students leave, not just because of academic reasons, they leave because they can't afford to
screw all these
stay.
guys.
They leave because they can't make it work
I promise,
financially.
I'm not
and
gonna
we need to change that.
Thank you, Mr.
corrupt
Dean.
and
The next
awful.
question comes from Daryl Cobbins and will be for Mr. Boyd, Mr. Fitzhugh, and Ms.
I'll say
Harlow.
some
Daryl?
stuff that you
Campaigns
probably
often
hate.
talk about getting tough
I'll
on
do some
crime.
stuff you probably
According
hate.
to the Vanderbilt poll, 70% of Tennesseans
But
believe that to reduce
It
crime,
ain't about money
it's better to
for me.
provide more access to quality education and
I really care about
to address social
education
and economic
and
differences.
infrastructure,
While
net neutrality,
27%
healthcare.
believe that the focus should be on spending
Legalize
more
that
money
weed,
and
y'all.
resources on law enforcement with more prisons, police, and judges. Where would you spend your
want-
resources, and what is your plan to reduce crime across our state?
Thank you, Daryl. Mr. Boyd.
I want
Across the state of
protection
Tennessee,
for
we have
LGBT
130,000 young people that are
I want
between ages of 16
anti-discrimination
and
laws.
24 that aren't in school,
There's,
they're not working, which is a recipe for crime and a lot of bad things.
There's a lot of things
We've
we
got to
can
get
do.
those people redirected.
I mean,
into the
I'm for
workforce.
unionized labor.
I worry, as we've mentioned here in the state
Public
tonight,
schools.
that too many of them have given up hope because they've been told if you don't go to four-year college, you're not going to be successful.
Provide
We need to
opportunities
bring
for
those
homeless
schools
people.
back to the high schools so that
And
they see that
this
there's another
isn't
path to
popular.
success.
This isn't gonna
Another
get me
big
elected.
issue across our
Like,
state
nobody
is
cares
mental
about this
health,
except
which is
for
something we
homeless
haven't
people.
addressed today.
But I do
31% of
want
our seniors say
to
they're
provide
very
them
sad or
opportunities
depressed. 16%
and a path out.
say
So a lot of them are-
they've contemplated suicide in the last year, and 8%
they come on
say
in, it's fine.
they've actually attempted suicide. We've got to put more mental health
I've got
resources
house
in the
guests,
schools for our
I've got
children.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
servers.
Mr. Fitzhugh.
You know, I'm reminded of that old
They don't want any
commercial, that old
parlance. The
Frown
Germans,
commercial where the guy holds an oil
they
filter
don't-
and says, "You can pay me
they don't
now
care about you
for
people.
a new oil filter, or pay me later
They don't-
with a new motor."
They're not
I
interested
think
in
that
American
still goes
politics.
today. I think this
They're
ability
irritated
to
by the whole
read by
thing,
third
and
grade,
you know what? So am I.
if a child can learn to read by third grade, then they can read to learn after that, and it will keep them out of trouble and keep them out of being incarcerated. And incarceration costs have gotten so high now, we use an inordinate amount of money in our state to incarcerate people. So we need to look at restructuring like other states have done on a bipartisan basis. We're behind with that. We need to catch up and make sure that people are safe, but we give mental treatment, we give job training, and we get these people out of jail so they don't, frankly, cost us so much.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzhugh. Ms. Harwell.
I'm against privatized prisons.
We got to
end that nonsense.
Law enforcement across the state,
And
not only our
I think
Tennessee
anybody's
Bureau of
been convicted
Investigation,
for
but also our
nonviolent
state
drug
troopers,
offense,
and I will
get them out of
continue
there.
that record. I think
And
going
then,
forward,
you know,
what we really need
give
is
them
truth
training
in
for some of these
sentencing
jobs
in the
I've
state
been
of Tennessee.
talking
I
about,
think
the
it is time for us
infrastructure
now. We have it
and,
in the last decade. Review our
information
criminal
technology
codes.
jobs.
And, you know,
we can
our
get them
prison
work.
beds are really valuable
I went to
resources.
a thing
and
here in
they're
East
limited.
Nashville where it was
And so I think our most
a bunch of
violent
speakers who
offenders
were
need to be in our prison
incarcerated,
system, and those that are not need to be paying back
state
society
level,
their
and
debt,
then
not sitting in a prison cell.
the transition
so I think
out
we really need to review that,
is,
but I will tell you
it's a
that
big deal.
opportunity
It's a critical
is the
moment
most
where
we can do
it's a
to
make or
make sure
break
that the next
thing
generation
for them.
understands they can have
There
a
are
life
people who
outside
get
of crime.
institutionalized
Our next
and go
question will
right
come
back
from
into the
Michael
prison system
Anastasi, and
because
will be
they're
for all of our
comfortable there.
candidates. Michael?
And because while they were incarcerated, they got taught better how to be better criminals.
Well, most of tonight's questions deal with
And that's
policy
the cycle
issues. I'd like
that
to
we
ask
need
you
to
about building
break.
a team. If you are elected governor, you'll have a short amount of time
Incarceration
to
isn't
find
the
and
answer.
hire
We're-
22 commissioners
we are
who will
certainly
lead
not
the
the
various
land
state
of the free.
agencies and approximately 40 members of the governor's
It's
office
crazy.
staff.
We have more people,
How will you go
more
about this daunting
percentage
task,
of our
and for
people
what type
are
of people
incarcerated
will you be looking?
than in
Thank
most
you, Michael. Ms.
countries.
Harwell.
It's
You're right. It
It's
is
weird
a
that
daunting
that's a
undertaking,
private
and it's one
business.
that I really wake
we've
up and
got
think about.
a lot of
But I
bullshit
believe that
drug
we have
laws
a lot of good
passed
people,
by the same people who
not
have
only in
invested in
government,
these
but in the
private
private
business.
sector that are willing to serve
I
for
like
a
it.
limited time period in state government. And I have been impressed with Governor Haslam and who he has brought to the table. I've enjoyed working
There's no
with
reason to kiss
commissioners,
Haslam's
and
ass.
hopefully
He's
I will
out.
bring the same caliber of
We're
people
vying for
back
his
into
job
state
now,
government.
ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Harwell. Mr. Dean?
I think it obviously is one of the most important things a governor does, and you need to assemble a team to assemble your team. You need to have a transition team that will help identify the best folks, and I think things you want to look
let me
at,
write this
I
down.
think you want
You need to
diversity,
get good
you
people
want
to get
reflect
good
the makeup
people
of the
for your
state.
team. Okay?
You want to have people of great confidence and competence, folks who can talk to the public and the public will have confidence in.
You're just explaining,
so my
like,
standards would be
building a
a
team
diverse
building? Is that what we're
cabinet
doing?
filled with people representing the
we're stating
entire
basic
great
facts
state of
about
Tennessee and
creating
people
an
who are
organization that's
incredibly
effective.
talented.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Dean.
I would make this selection process the same way that we select senior managers in business. You find the absolute most highly competent and highly skilled
I was going to say the
experts.
hottest.
You know, I'm
We get
not
the hottest people,
the
we put 'em in
most
charge.
brilliant guy at Lee Company.
Give them a bunch of
But
booze.
I
Make
am
it an
a person
MTV
who knows how to
reality show.
find the most brilliant people for the different roles at our corporation. And that's how we should approach state government. And I believe that when our founders created this nation, they intended that folks from the private sector, that we the people would engage in the public square and then remove themselves. I would look strong at private sector folks, at passionate nonprofit folks, that people that are getting the work done outside of state government, and bring them in to help bring fresh ideas and new approaches.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Boyd?
So as Commissioner of Economic and Community Development for 2 years, I got to work with all those other commissioners, have a good sense of what their jobs are and what high expectations look like at each of those jobs. 4 things that I would look for. 1, values. They've got to belong to a set of or believe in a set of values such as transparency and collaboration and teamwork, and put team first. 2nd, they need to be subject matter experts. You need to have people that are competent in the field that they're in. 3rd, we do need to have diversity, both in race and gender and geographic representation across the state, something that sometimes we've been lacking. And then finally, I need to have people that share the vision of making Tennessee the state of opportunity, and are focused and passionate about that.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Fitzhugh?
I agree that you get the best people you can. I'm the CEO of a small bank, but we have great people there, and that's the key. In a government setting, I've been fortunate to serve under 4 different governors. I've known every commissioner that served, and most of the governor's staff. I know what kind of people it will take and what the jobs are. It's a waste of time. And I look forward. I think we should do what's right. It has to be a diverse population. It has to be.
And I figure, like, you get some smart people
who
got ideas,
Tennesseans who live here, love this state, and know what the state's
tell
all about.
them,
So
hey,
those are the things
go
that
do
I
your
would
thing.
take into
Be
account
great.
to put together a
And then,
team that can
like, their
do right
ideas,
for every
a
single
cream
citizen.
comes to
in
the
the
top.
You
You know what I mean?
Question
Like,
comes
you
from
just
Darryl Cobbins
get
and will be from
rise to
Mr.
the
Dean
top.
and Ms.
So,
Harwell. Darryl?
all we gotta
In
do is
recent
go
years, there
skim
seems to
that
be tension
cream
between the state
and
legislature
put that in there, right? It's
such as guns and parks, local monuments, and short-term rentals.
like,
According to the Vanderbilt
hey,
poll,
what's your guys' plan?
54% of Tennesseans
My plan should be
have the right to make
awesome.
decisions on
So,
local matters,
vote
without
Riden for
financial
TN.
penalties from the state. While 32% believe that state government should be permitted to impose financial penalties on local government. What is your position on local control, and what would you do as governor?
Thank you, Darryl. Mr.
This
Dean.
is basically a states' rights issue boiled down to the
mayor, I have been
city
through
level.
this, and
Do you think
the
cities
state law
have
basically is that cities
the authority
have
to
the
make
authority that
decisions
is
for
given
their
to them
areas?
from the state.
Yeah.
But the state should exercise that authority with some wisdom and some judgment.
The state has a
a
little
specific
bit of.
example would be guns and
The
parks.
state should have authority
this
over
is a Second
state
Amendment state, strong
things.
supporter of gun rights,
Interstates?
and the legislature decided that we should have
Infrastructure
guns and
stuff?
parks, but they allowed cities
There's,
to opt
like,
out.
human rights
And
issues,
Nashville opted out along with other cities.
things that affect us all
And
that
then a
aren't
couple years later, they
as
decided, well, that wasn't good enough. We're going to make
minute
everybody
as,
do it.
you know,
and then
hey,
they
we don't
overrode
want you
what
to
Nashville and other cities
go
wanted and forced us to have guns
75
and parks. I don't
on
think
this
that's
road.
good judgment.
Like,
I
that
don't
could be
think
handled
that's
by the
wisdom.
municipality.
I think punishing Memphis for the monuments was a huge mistake.
Yes.
I think a city like Memphis, which is predominantly African American, should be able to make that decision.
Thank you, Mr.
That's a
Dean.
decision that
Yes,
should be
that's
local.
true.
Ms.
I agree with Mr. Dean.
Well, thank you very much. I think I have a good working relationship with my
Yeah.
local
Cities should be able to
government
make
here in
decisions for
Nashville. I
themselves.
try to represent them
And
well.
to
And,
punish,
you know, I
like,
will tell you,
when
when
you
it comes
say,
to guns
okay,
and parks, I voted
we don't
against that
want
piece of
Confederate,
legislation, although I will tell you that I
you know,
think I have a
monuments to come
strong
down.
Second Amendment record.
Well,
but I believe that it
the
was up
people
to
who live
local
there
governments
wanted them
whether
to
they
come
wanted to
down.
allow guns or not.
And
We
they made
allow them
that
in our
happen.
state parks. We've
And
never
they
had a bad
figured out a
incident.
way to do it
But
legally.
it's up to the locals if
You
they
can
want to
punish
do that.
them
The same with
for that
short-term rental
is
units.
overexertion
I again deferred. I
of
voted
authority.
against the piece of legislation because I thought
Like,
Nashville
just,
should be in
and
control
it's all
of their own
racist.
zoning issues.
It's
Thank you,
all
Ms.
race
Harwell.
and racism,
We have
which
a,
makes
one more
it so much
serious
worse.
rapid-fire question. In
Like-
a single word, the Parkland students, have they had a positive or negative impact
And here we go.
on
Like,
the
the issue of
conversation
states'
around
rights.
guns and gun
Like,
control?
we're
Mr.
talking
Dean.
about Civil War
Positive.
era racism.
Could you
We're
repeat
like,
that?
oh,
In a
you're going to
single
try
word,
to
Parkland students, Parkland
make
High School
this nice for
students, have they
black
had a
people?
positive or
All
negative
right,
impact
well,
on the conversation
boom.
around guns and gun control?
Let's.
I think they've had an.
I know we're not going to cut
because
racism
I think
out.
what they've done
Like,
is
this is the most
raise
racist
a
country on the
conversation
planet.
around
Crazy.
removing the
Just a
rights.
single word. You said
a single
just
word.
negative.
Let's not pretend that
Harwell?
it's not, and let's
You
not
know,
pretend
it's
that
always
we're
good when
doing
young people
something
would get involved in the political process, so I think it's
good
positive.
when we punish
Ms.
people
Fitzer.
for not being racist
Mr. Board.
dirtbags.
Positive.
Our next question will come from
Like,
Laura Woods. Will be from all of our
First thing I'm
candidates
going to do as
today.
governor
Well,
is
we
take
mentioned
the Nathan
Parkland.
Bedford
With the
Forest
recent school
statues
shootings, there is an intense
and
debate
rip them out
across
of the state
country about
capitol.
what needs to be done
And
to make
that one that's on
schools
private
safer.
property off
According to
565
poll,
South in
Tennessee
Nashville,
is evenly split on allowing teachers and school
I will
officials
personally
to carry
destroy
guns in
that.
school.
I will
49%
commit
favor,
felonies
49%
to
opposed.
destroy that monument.
What is your position?
It's gotta go.
And what else
It's
do you
just,
believe
it's
needs
stupid.
to be done to address
it's
school
dumb
safety?
that it's still
Thank you,
there.
Laura. Mr. Lee.
All those gotta go.
I'll go from a single question, single
And
word to a
the ones that were built,
explanation. I do
you know,
believe
in the
that
70s as a reaction to the civil rights movement.
I do believe that the
And
whole
they have no
gun
historical
issue is
value.
really
They're garbage.
important. Second
But
Amendment rights are really
yeah, we'll
critical,
put them in a museum
particularly
of
when we
racism,
begin to
if
take
that's what you
away the
want.
rights of
We'll preserve them,
citizens,
but they don't have to be on
law-abiding
public.
citizens.
They don't have to be there
because
as
of
intimidating icons,
the
which is
actions
what they
of
were
criminals.
intended to be.
I do think that
But they
protecting
still
our
are.
students
They
is
can go away.
absolutely paramount. We have to do that. We protect our banks with guns. We protect our courthouses with guns.
Oof.
We protect
Are we on
our
guns?
governor with firearms, and yet we leave our children in gun-free zones. I believe that a willing teacher that's been vetted, that's gone through a rigorous process, should be allowed to defend students against criminals in their
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
People think I'm crazy.
So I said positive because it's.
That guy wants guns
to
in
have a
schools.
conversation.
Did
However,
you just hear him?
even though I believe that
I don't want my child to be in any school that
protect herself and her
teachers
children,
are armed.
goes through all the proper training. She should have the right.
She will not be in any school where teachers are armed.
I haven't met a teacher yet that wanted to. Our first line of defense needs to be our school resource officers. As governor, we're going to make sure every single school has a great school resource officer to protect them. We also got to make sure we're making an investment in the infrastructure of the school. We spent billions of dollars on our airport security. We need to look at our schools in the same way.
Now,
our most precious asset are our children, and we got to make sure we protect them. I want to come back to the final thing, the thing that is causing all of this in the
They're dildos. I'm just going to say it. They're all dildos.
The people that have committed
They're all fucking dickheads.
People knew they had a mental health issue. We have to make more investment in mental health in our schools and across the state.
They're not our best. Mr. Boyd. They're not our finest.
I do not think teachers
they're not great. And
teachers want to teach. They don't.
Florida shooting we had a couple months ago.
I supported a bill.
School resource officers sat outside and listened to children die. And when it was over,
so this year I supported a bill.
But he was no help. He had a gun.
By the way,
he didn't do shit.
Allowed retired and off-duty police officers to be safety officers and for security purposes at schools.
We got a gun problem in this country, and the answer isn't more guns.
And I've shot an AR-15 a few times. I don't see.
I love guns.
All these school shootings, the last ones have been with that particular weapon.
They've been in my family. They've been around my whole life. I've got one here. I've got at least one.
It's not a target practice gun, so I'm concerned about that particular weapon.
They don't need to be around school.
Ms. Harwell.
And we don't need to.
I will issue what Representative Fitzhugh said. We did pass legislation this year that would allow retired police officers to come to our schools and help protect our schools. Here's the other thing that we did: Homeland Security. It is going to go to every school in the state of Tennessee and assess their vulnerability and give them recommendations of how they can make their schools safer places.
Let's build them into forts.
In addition to that, we have $30 million that are available for grants for our schools to apply to the state in order to hire resource officers that can come and protect our citizens. The legislature debated whether or not to arm teachers. They decided against that piece of legislation, and I think they made the wise decision there.
First time I've been there. I've lived in Nashville
already the state law is that those counties that are distressed, meaning they don't have a lot of resources, can already
every school doesn't have to look like that. We don't have to build up fortifications.
I'm not in favor of arming teachers, and every teacher I talk to is opposed to it.
Gun sales.
I believe using police officers, retired police officers, and if necessary, putting state funds into it, you should do it. We're talking about the safety of our children. I think this is a moment where there ought to be a discussion about how we keep weapons out of the hands of dangerous people.
Before you should be allowed to buy a gun.
You know, this is a Second Amendment state. I support the Second Amendment, but I think everybody agrees that people who are going to kill other people,
you should go present yourself.
Mentally ill, they may be criminals, they may
to
be
a teacher.
whatever, but
you should buy them dinner or lunch or whatever. You should buy them lunch.
Look at ways where we can get them out of their hands, whether that's better background checks.
You should have a lunch date with
I think there's room for compromise, room for people to come together and try to solve this problem.
You should buy them lunch, and you should have a conversation with them for an hour. And at the end of that hour, that teacher should decide whether or not you get allowed to buy guns. So they can ask you anything they want.
According to the Vanderbilt poll,
entirely up to them.
77% of Tennesseans
this is
believe
entirely
that
a judgment call on their part.
Enough.
But they sign a little permission slip for you to be able to buy a gun.
How does that rank with your other
and then you can take that to a retailer.
And teacher pay and tenure
and get a gun
to student performance.
But you have to do that. This is just a part of my background check program.
One of the things I want to do as governor on day one is open up.
Teachers have to approve you.
What's known as the BEP.
And see, they get a free lunch out of it.
We can better fund our teachers. So the first answer to your question is no, we're not paying them enough. We're still fairly.
I naturally transition to whatever the hell it is they're talking about.
And compensation.
Yeah, teachers aren't being paid enough.
We want to be able to pay our superstars.
Teachers are striking across the country. They're walking out on the job.
One of the things I would like to look at.
I hope they don't do that.
Performance bonuses.
Teachers
that are.
I do know that we need to pay them better.
We should be able to give them
superstar
compensation. Another big area in which I want to
provide
is some of our
incentives
poor
for them
counties in
to
our
get
rural communities
certifications
to have the top talent. A lot of times,
and continue their education as teachers.
And so working with programs to be able to attract.
I tweeted about some certification in rural communities.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Fitzhugh.
No,
if they pursue these certifications and get them, they should get pay raises, and there should be
public education
quantifiable ways for teachers to
just think if we could bring that 46 to 32,
by continuing their education,
probably get us in the top 10 or the top 15 as far as
what they're doing as teachers.
And much of that
would be
in
make it
pay. And yes, I think longevity should
fighting for
count.
these jobs.
And yes, I think teachers
when I was teaching
be,
here at a for-profit school,
a portion of their
I was getting $36 an hour. I don't know what they get
well they do in their classroom
schools.
with their particular students.
$36
the problem
an hour.
is we haven't gotten that right yet.
But,
and until we get it right, we can't penalize teachers by a system that's not working right yet.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzhugh. Ms. Harwell.
We can't pay them
if
better.
you really want to know what someone values, you look at their budget. And in the last 2 budget cycles, we have put more money into education than ever in our state's history.
Good.
And we have increased
enough.
teacher salaries in the last 2 consecutive budgets. So I'm proud of that. Is there more that we need to do? Absolutely.
She sounds defensive.
But I think we're headed in the right direction, and I think our teachers understand how much we value what they do for us.
Thank you, Ms. Harwell.
I don't think they do.
Comes from Darrell Cobbins.
I don't think they do understand how much you value. Well, maybe they do.
Since Prentice Cooper was governor between 1939 and 1945, every governor has had to deal with at least one recession, except for our current governor, Bill Haslam.
They should be paid better.
Given the cyclical nature of our economy, it is very likely the next governor will have to manage through a recession. If you were governor and have to make significant budget reductions, how would you manage through, and in what areas would you be willing to make major cuts?
Thank you, Darrell. Ms. Harwell.
Where would I make major cuts?
Well, I've been in the legislature for some time, and I've been there when times have been good. And you're
salary.
right, Governor Haslam has enjoyed tremendous economic growth. Our entire
state
nation
legislators
has. But I've also been there when times have not been good.
Should get their salaries
and we've
cut
had to
in
make
half.
cuts. But I've been willing to do that, and it's not pleasant.
I think it should be a public
but that is what
service
leadership is all
to go
about. There's a reason
job.
why the federal government doesn't
I don't
balance their
think
budget.
they should be paid.
You know why? It's hard.
More than
I've had
our
speaker
lowest
have
paid
to call
teacher.
members into
I
my
think our
chamber,
lowest
and I've
paid
had to
teacher
say to
should
them,
make more
"You're not going to get
than
funded this
their
year." I'm
state
sorry.
representative.
And that's hard to do, especially when I rely on those members. But that is what leadership is all about. And government cannot do it all. We have to live within our means. And again, I will tell you, the most valuable thing we give to you and to your children is that we are a low-tax state and we are the lowest debt state in the nation. And I will continue
that's not
that.
the most valuable thing to give to me or my children.
Well, I had the experience of being a chief executive during a recession, the deepest recession since the Great Depression. And what I was guided by when actually the city had less money from one year to the next was that you have really clear priorities. And my priorities were public education, public safety, and economic development. And we had to cut every other department, including my own, 15 to 20%. But I felt for the future of the city, it was important to protect education. It was important to make sure that we were doing what we needed to do in public safety, and we continued to work on economic development. I think you've got to make those tough priority decisions. Another thing you have to do is have a rainy day fund, and I think the state has one. It should always be higher. I increased the rainy day fund during my 8 years as mayor in Nashville, and that's what I try to do as governor.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Lee.
Be smart.
I referenced to tragedy earlier in my life, and there was a period of time when I left my business in many ways, emotionally and physically, for a couple of years, and came back and found our company in deep trouble. And we had to make very difficult decisions and cut a company from 100 million in revenues to 67 in 1 year. That company's now gone up to 240 million, but that was a very difficult, and lay off 400 workers in 14 months. And for a person who loves his employees, that was a very difficult thing to do. But I knew that if I didn't do it, we would lose the company. State government, the governor of a state has an ultimate responsibility to be certain that the government is managed, the budget is managed, and the difficult decisions are made to be able to determine between what you need and what you want.
I'm glad you're coming to grips with that.
Those things that we need and not those we want.
Governor should govern.
Business person over the last.
I'm going out on a limb here, but I think you should make
down years. And 2008 was a particularly critical year in our company's history, the only time that we had a down year. So we know what it means to survive through a difficult time. I've watched Governor Haslam over the last 4 years bring each commissioner in every year with the discipline of reducing your budget by 3 to 5%. They don't always take the 3 to 5%, but every year we have to bring in a lower cost. I think as a discipline, as governor, we'll continue to work to bring in our costs so that we can be prepared for that difficult time when it comes. Our priorities will be the same as my company. We was investing in our employees, and it was investing in sales and marketing. One of the easiest things is to cut your sales and marketing team. As the governor, we need to continue to invest in education.
We need to market the state better.
We need to continue to invest in our economic development to bring those jobs in that our economy will then be needing.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Fitzhugh.
You know, I think it's key that that the public trusts their governor. I think if the public trusts their governor and that governor shows transparency, then we can work our way through anything. So that's the reason I was pretty much amazed when I read that re-reported in the paper about back during the flood of 2010 when Davidson County, the city of Nashville, actually withdrew $7.4 million from their flood fund, the federal flood fund, and used it to build an outdoor amphitheater. You see, that's where we lose the public trust. That won't work because there were 52 other counties that had a right to maybe have some of that money that didn't get the opportunity. So public trust is what you need when times get tough.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzhugh. Let's try another rapid-fire question. This is a fantasy question. This is a fantasy question. I'm sorry.
About as close as you can get.
Go ahead.
Now, Mr. Fitzhugh's got it wrong, and he also didn't answer the
question. You're allowing him to steamroll you?
The money that was used for flood mitigation, not for building an amphitheater.
That's not true.
And as Mr. Fitzhugh knows, one of the best stories about the city of Nashville is the way the city responded to that flood. We went through a natural disaster after a great recession, and this city came together in a way and perhaps he can't understand. But we got back up on our feet faster than any place imaginable.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, folks. Thank you.
That's cute that you said that, but we did spend money on...
One more rapid-fire question. This is for all you hardworking folks who have a tough time answering this, but you have a day off. No campaigning. You have the day to yourself. What do you do to relax? Mr. Lee.
Pokemon Go.
I live on a farm.
Spending time with my daughter. I'll go to grill some chicken and drink some beers. I'll go to a comedy show.
Ms. Harwell?
And,
without a doubt, take a nice long walk and read a good book.
Mr. Fitzhugh?
That's what I do.
Whatever Pam wants me to do, but sometimes, most of the time it includes the grandchildren, so we visit them a lot.
Mr. Boyd?
So 4 weeks ago, we had a new granddaughter, the first grandchild in our families, for Virginia and I, and so a day off is holding the granddaughter.
All day long you're holding a granddaughter?
Family, books, or baseball.
Our final question tonight will be for all of our candidates. The order in which the candidates respond was predetermined through a random drawing earlier conducted with representatives from each campaign. Please stick with our 45 seconds as our clock is beginning to tick. Why should Tennesseans vote for you, and what would success look like for our state if you are elected governor? Mr. Fitzhugh.
I believe I have a body of work that I've constructed over the years, not to run for governor, but that's just how it is. So I think I can pull this state together. I can hit the ground running.
I'd like to direct everybody to my body of work.
On the very first day of the time that I'm the governor, and we have a great state here. All we've got to do is take care of it and take care of our people so that we all can prosper. You know, I believe in people first. I believe in progress for all. And I believe in Tennessee always. If we keep those precepts,
Tennessee always.
I look forward to what this state has done and what the Lord has given us and where we're going in the next 4 years. It'll be an honor if I get to
They call whiskey bourbon.
I believe that I have practical experience in state government to hit the ground running.
Taking them down.
I have been in state government for a while. I would never hire someone who did not know about the company. And I know about state government. I will tell you that also I believe that I have the ability to work with the state legislature.
You wouldn't hire anybody who didn't know about the company?
We may stand up here as gubernatorial candidates and tell you what we're going to do, but the reality is we're not going to do anything that the Tennessee General Assembly doesn't allow us to do.
And
so I have an ability to work with the legislature. And I will also say this. It has been my privilege to serve as a speaker during a time when we have seen our most significant efforts of reform in state government. I'm proud of where we are as state. There is no other state in the nation I would rather live in than Tennessee.
Whether or not. Ms. Harwell. Mr. Boyd.
So I'm not a professional politician. I'm a businessman. I ran an organization of 725 employees. I think the next governor needs to be somebody that's actually ran a large organization. This is a 37,000,
I think next governor should be somebody who had a company in Knoxville.
I think it's also important to have an
entrepreneur. Business mind.
Definition, an entrepreneur
makes a lot of money doing business.
In my little bit of experience in government, government needs some innovation and needs some disruption. But it's also important that they've actually done that and had some experience. I've had two stints in public service, both as a volunteer in higher education. I was able to create the Drive to 55 and the Tennessee Promise, and as a commissioner bring 50,000 jobs to our state and create the Governor's Rural Task Force. The state will be the state of opportunity, opportunity for better education, opportunity for better jobs, and opportunity for everyone when my term is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Mr. Dean.
I'm running for governor because I believe the people of Tennessee want a governor who's going to be pragmatic, have common sense, and get things done, and focus on the issues that matter to the voters and the people of this great state.
I think you're shooting
I do not
really
think the
high
voters
with those
of Tennessee
expectations.
want an extremist. You know, as mayor of Nashville, I ran in a nonpartisan election. I had to get Democrats, Republicans, and independents to vote for me. And when I managed the city, I didn't do it in a partisan way. I did it in a way that would move our state
how about
forward.
This little forum? Is this done in a nonpartisan way?
It's a great saying.
Are independents participating?
Republican way of filling a
Let's work a little bit harder on that. Let's get some voices that aren't
education. I
backed by millions of dollars
and I want to work on
giant
jobs.
campaigns.
Essentially, I want to work hard and just make things good happen for this great state.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Lee.
You have a very important.
You just woke me up from a nap.
Choose a governor.
And so you have me at a disadvantage.
That's the executive leader of this
state.
Thank you
for propping me up here
to serve in my career and have a life of executive
I'd like
leadership.
to thank whoever cut my
leading
hair.
a $250 million organization,
and
leading one of the
whoever
largest
tied this tie
nonprofits
for
in the
me.
state. And I am an outsider. The one person that's
You're an
race who hasn't worked
outsider?
for the government or who hasn't been a politician.
You guys,
and that is a strength in itself.
I'm in my living room
Because there is a big
hijacking a
difference
broadcast
between leadership
and superimposing
and
myself into it.
And the most powerful form
And
of
this guy
leadership
just
is
called
servant
himself
leadership.
an
And I'd be honored
outsider.
to serve you as that leader as we take Tennessee and make it not only a better place to live, but a leader in America.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Two quick yes or no questions for all of you on a personal note. Have you enjoyed running for governor more than you thought? Has it been harder than you thought it would be? Ms. Harwell.
It's not as fun as I thought it would be.
It is difficult, but yes, I've enjoyed it.
It's not difficult.
Mr. Lee.
Yes and yes. Difficult, but absolutely
It really
inspiring.
isn't difficult.
Mr. Dean.
Yes, I've enjoyed it, and it's not easy.
Mr. Boyd.
Yes and yes.
Okay.
It's inspiring and energizing every day.
And Mr. Fitzhugh.
Yes and yes.
Thank you, candidates, so much for taking
So,
part in that.
they've all said it's difficult. Let me tell you something. Getting enough signatures, getting enough valid signatures to get on the ballot, which I've done,
Tennessee and
was
our host, Lipscomb University.
not
and
difficult.
Thank you, our audience
I had
members.
to
We
get
really
out of
appreciate
bed
your interest. This is
and
the
go
next step
talk to people
towards
I already
electing the next
know
leadership of our
and
great
love,
state. We thank you
and
very
who love
much.
me
We hope the forum
and
has
or
helped
hate
to
me
get to know the candidates and better understand the
but are willing to
positions.
sign my
We want to
thing.
thank you all for taking part.
And
Thank you
that
to
was
our
the hardest
panel.
part.
Thank you again, Leadership Tennessee.
This
Have a
isn't
great night.
difficult. It's very, very simple. Being taken seriously as a candidate is difficult. But not if you have millions of dollars. And they don't have that struggle at all. None of them. Like, just tweet that you're running and be a Republican, and goddamn, they just send you money. It's crazy. Alright, I don't know if I did any good tonight. Did I sway your vote? Listen, this is what I'm for. This is what I'm against. I'm going to pop this graphic up on the screen. Internet statewide, public utility, fiber optic, following the Chattanooga model. Medicare for all. Everybody needs health care. Let's cut the profits out of it. Unionized labor, I'm for them. Public schools, let's make them first. Let's pay our teachers better than we pay our politicians. Let's pay our teachers. I'm going to take this off for a second and say this directly into the camera. Hold on. Just hold on. I want to make sure. Nope. Okay. Let's pay our teachers. Let's pay our teachers more than we pay our politicians. All of them. As governor, I will not take home any more money than the lowest paid teacher in Tennessee. I want to hear any one of those idiots say that. I want state legislators to make the same pledge that they will not earn any more, not a penny more than the lowest paid teacher in this state. None of you will say that. You all talk about education. You're full of shit. All of you. I've been told not to curse so much my whole life. People have said specifically in this campaign, you shouldn't curse. You know what? We're talking about politicians right now. I'm going to say shit. I'm for high-speed rail connecting the state. I'm for sustainable housing for the homeless. I believe it can be done with renewable, sustainable construction. Earthships are pretty great, and I think I know that there are tent cities throughout the state where homeless people put up their tents, build little structures, and have communities where they live or try to live. And those places are dangerous. They're not good housing. And we can train them to build housing for themselves out of trash, out of garbage. Look it up, Earthships. They're amazing, beautiful. House, New Mexico. There's an architect working out there who's built hundreds of them. And he's got designs that are hurricane resistant. They've gone to the Philippines and other places where hurricanes have destroyed everything, and they've built these little structures that are built out of old tires and cans and bottles and a little bit of concrete and iron rebar, but you can build them very cheaply and quickly and have permanent structures that.
Good evening from Lipscomb University's Allen Arena, where we just wrapped up a Tennessee gubernatorial forum with 5 out of the 6 top-tier candidates for governor. I'm Dwayne Gang, the politics editor for the USA Today Network Tennessee, joined by our opinion editor David Plazas for some quick analysis on tonight's forum. An hour-and-a-half forum, whole host a range of topics, everything from education to gun control to the opioid crisis, big healthcare-focused debate as well. What was your key takeaway? There seem to be some differences starting to emerge here on some of the candidates, both on the Republican and Democratic side.
It's great. We can build these things.
That the Vanderbilt
train the homeless people to build these things.
Said that education is the
put them to
number one
work building
issue,
these things.
but I heard a lot about healthcare.
Something they can
Healthcare was
do.
where we heard the most contentious types of conversation, including one moment where Craig Fitzhugh, the minority leader, said that had we expanded Medicaid, we wouldn't lose so many hospitals. And Beth Harwell, the Speaker of the House, responded that in fact, other states like Kentucky are also losing hospitals as well. And the one thing that Speaker Harwell didn't say was that the uninsured rate is much higher in Tennessee and Kentucky, 11% to 6%. So I found that was really interesting, and I'm glad they spoke about healthcare outcomes and the need to better fund it. And they didn't know how yet, because they're not sure exactly how the Trump administration is going to approach the issue of Medicaid expansion, if at all.
Medicaid expansion has been one of the points where we have seen differences, clear differences between the Republican side and the Democratic side. Where the Democratic candidates are really quick to say, yes, I will, or I will fight for it. While Republicans
the best way to treat that is
let's look for a block grant program or something like that through the federal government.
Like if
another
they're
issue that I heard quite a bit
self-medicating,
about was education and funding teachers. You heard more statements that are more stereotypically Democratic from Carl Dean and also Craig Fitzhugh saying we need to pay our teachers better.
If you talk to them,
we need more resources that are distributed. I think Dean said distributed much more fairly. The Republicans talked more about accountability, and especially when it came to testing, although they expressed disappointment about the fact that the whole online testing failed again this year.
You know, we last month we had a whole forum just on rural issues and the unique issues and unique challenges that rural Tennessee faces. One of the questions tonight was about economic development in the rural areas. And Beth Harwell, the House Speaker, you know, she's from Nashville, she represents Nashville. Nashville's a booming city right now, lots of cranes. But companies have gotten incentives to come and relocate here, to locate here. And she specifically said that she would not provide state incentives for companies looking to locate to Middle Tennessee, instead providing those to companies looking to locate to rural areas. What was your take on that?
Well, it's really interesting because there's been a very robust debate about so-called corporate welfare when it comes to governments funding private enterprise, and obviously we've seen it become a factor here, be it with Major League Soccer,
everybody deserves.
And I think that it's one of those things that's very interesting that she would deny that benefit to her home district, to the Nashville area, which is really accounts for 40% of the sales tax revenue of the state. So there seems to be an incentive to allowing those incentives to those companies still, if that's the approach we want to take.
They don't have that sort of
Rather, she's picking winners and losers.
There were a number of questions about guns, particularly around school safety, arming teachers. But one of the rapid-fire questions that we the moderator asked all of the candidates a rapid-fire question. Answer this in one word. Has the student movement following the Parkland shooting in February had a negative or positive impact on the topic of guns and gun control? Everyone said positive except Bill Lee. What was your take on that?
Well, I raised my eyebrow, admittedly,
anyway,
but obviously coming from a point of
legalization of marijuana. I already said that. 70s week alcohol sales.
The notion
already
of
did that. Already achieved.
One voice against gun owners, and we've seen this a very
I haven't been paying
issue.
attention
Even
to
the
people,
work that we've done
they've
at
been
Tennessee
talking over
and
me
with
because I
Civility
wasn't paying
Tennessee,
attention to the
this is
audio.
probably the most polarizing issue that we found. Does it mean if you ask for gun control that you're anti-gun? And I think that's what he was getting at. I thought that Speaker Harwell's comment was really interesting. She talked about it from an educational perspective.
I've been tweeting at the NRA asking for blood money.
Politics.
I
really,
fascinating
I want to win.
Debate or
and I know that
again.
To win, I'm going to need
all the latest analysis and stories about this forum. Up
like I say, I've had guns my whole life.
Thanks for watching.
I'm ready for that gun money. I'm ready for the NRA to buy me. Go ahead and send me that money, boys. Oh, are they off the air? Good. Anyway, so what I was saying is I would happily sell my soul to the NRA for that money. I can't wait to be fully bought as a politician, accept that money, and be rich. And I'll tell you this, here, if I have to, I would like to get an expensive surgery to get my arms replaced, these guns. I'd like to get these replaced by AR-15s, but that surgery is very expensive. So please send me money. I started this campaign off saying I'm against money in politics, and I still am. That's awful. But you know what? If you can't beat them, join them. And so I'm all for money in politics now. You guys send me your money. I'm ready to do it. Go ahead and buy you some government. I'm available to the highest bidder. Go right ahead and send me your cash. Tell me what you want as far as legislation. And I'll make it happen. I'm Chad Riden. I'm running for governor. Thank you for watching. I doubt that you did, but if you did, on the off chance that you did, thank you. Thank you for watching. I'll do more videos whether you like it or not, and I hope, more than anything, please register to vote. Register to vote. You can still do it. You can do it online. I'll put a link in the thing below. If you don't vote, like, this is all on you. Like, what if I won? Like, say you're against everything I'm saying. What if I won? I will rule the state with an iron fist. You want that to happen? No. Then register to vote and vote against me. That's fine. Do you agree with the things I've said? Well, register to vote. Because guess what? The other side has. They vote no matter what. Every single time. They don't miss an election. And if you think that, like, this is so crazy, but when I ran for mayor a couple years ago, I learned this. 99% of the people I talk to are for legalization of marijuana. 1% of them are registered to vote. And so it's like people say, like, oh, I agree with what you say, but I'm not going to register to vote. I don't want to be a sellout. I don't want to be a part of this corrupt system. Yeah, you need to engage, because that's how you stop it. That's how you stop everything from happening that you don't like, is by voting against it and for the things you like and approve. So just do that. Register. Only you can stop me from being governor. Register to vote. All right, you guys. I guess I'm going to get out of here. Oh, I need to say something. I need to show. I want to promote do a little homework here before I forget. Crap. Should have been prepared earlier. But I didn't. But I'm flexible. I can do stuff on the fly, you guys. I am able to do things. All right, let's see. There we go. Can I pop it up on the screen? Yes. Mishka Shubali, Dale J, and Sam Jaco, I'm not sure. With special guest comedian Chad Riden, you guys, May 16th, Teal Audio Lab. This is East Nashville. That's very near the Inglewood Kroger. This is Wednesday, tomorrow night, May 16th, 8 p.m. It costs $5. And this is a house show. It's going to be very small. It's going to be fun. It's going to be funky. I'm going to do a set of hilarious comedy and maybe throw some politics in there. We'll see how it goes. Those musicians are all great. Mishka Shubali is amazing. He did a show I produced over at Third Coast Comedy Club, maybe a year and a half ago. He did Comedy Cataclysm. But he's been on the Doug Stanhope podcast a lot. He's a musician, he's an author, he's a fun dude with great stories, and he's amazing music, and he's a lot of fun. And Dale is a neighbor of mine. He's a comedy fan. and a musician, and he's a great dude. And I'm not sure about Sam. Don't know him. I'll be honored to meet him and hang out, and it's going to be a fun night. So that's Teal Audio Lab tomorrow night at 8 p.m. here in East Nashville. And there's other shows coming up. I'm doing a series of house shows around here. In East Nashville, will be in Crossville, June, I want to say 16th or 19th, I'm not sure, but all the information is up at elect.chadriden.com. And you can follow me on social media, of course, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tail Lounge. NashvilleStandup.com has all the shows around Nashville. And you should go to a local comedy show. It's a great way to unwind and not be beaten down by all the horrors of the day. All right, thank you for watching. I love you. Goodbye forever. See you never. Bye.